Senhoras e senhores, representantes das mais diversas organizações e instituições internacionais e das
Ladies and
unidades
gentlemen
militares
that are
das Forças Armadas
representative of
e Segurança
international and
Pública,
national
estimada
institutions,
audiência está
dear
conectada virtualmente por meio
people
do
that are
canal do
connected
YouTube.
virtually through the YouTube,
Nosso bom dia,
and good
boa
morning
tarde
to
da
all of
Casa do
you.
Soldado,
Good
em
afternoon
Washington,
from the
D.C.
Casa del Soldado in
Eu sou o
Washington, D.C.
Coronel Fábio Rodrigo de
I
Assis,
am Colonel
do
Fabio
Exército
Rodrigo
Brasileiro,
de Assis of
chefe da
the
Divisão de
Brazilian Army,
Cooperação em
head
Desastres
of the
e
Division of
Ambiente,
Cooperation
Mudança
in
Climática
Disasters,
da Junta
the
Interamericana
Environment
de
and
Defesa.
Climate Change of the
No dia de
Inter-American
hoje,
Defense
iniciaremos o
Board.
nosso
Today,
seminário de prevenção,
we will
resposta
have
a
our
desastres
seminar on the
e
prevention
emprego
response to
aeroespacial,
disasters
cujo
and the
tema é
employment of
lições
airspace means,
aprendidas e boas práticas do
lessons
emprego
learned
das
and good
Forças
practices
Armadas,
of
das
the
Forças de
employment of the
Segurança
armed
Pública
forces
e
and
de
the
agências em
forces of
operações
public
de ajuda
security and the
humanitária,
different
bem como o
agencies in
emprego
humanitarian
aeroespacial na condução dessas
assistance, and how
ações.
the employment of
Esse
airspace
é um evento
helps in the
conjunto
conduction
sob a
of these actions. This
responsabilidade
is
de
an
duas
event that
organizações
is joint
internacionais,
under the
a Junta
responsibility of two
Interamericana de Defesa
international
e o Sistema de
organizations, the
Cooperação entre as
IADB
Forças
and the
Aéreas
System of
Americanas, o SECOFA.
Cooperation among the American
Além de
Air Forces,
agradecer a
SECOFA.
presença de todos
And
neste evento,
besides
gostaria
thanking
de
for your
compartilhar
presence
com
here,
todos
I would
vocês
like
o
to
orgulho
share
e a
with all
alegria
of
de
you
termos
the
nesse
pride
momento
and the
a
happiness of
inscrição de
having
mais de
at this moment
6.600
the
participantes,
subscription of more than
representando 48 países
6,600
de todo o
representatives
mundo.
representing 48
Hoje
countries of all
teremos
the
como
world.
moderadora a
Today,
Tenente
we will
Coronel
have our
Rocio
moderator,
Manzano
Lieutenant
Arellanes,
Colonel
do
Rocio
Exército
Manzano
Mexicano,
Arrellanes of the
assessora de
Mexican
integração de
Army,
gênero, direitos humanos
advisor of
e
gender
direito
integration in
internacional
human rights
humanitário
and
da Junta
international
Interamericana de
humanitarian
Defesa,
law of the
que conduzirá
Inter-American
o
Defense
primeiro
Board,
dia do seminário.
who will conduct
Tenente
the
Coronel
first day of
Manzano,
this
a
seminar.
palavra é
Lieutenant
sua.
Colonel Manzano, the floor is yours. Good morning, and thank you for your introduction, Colonel Fabio de Assis. Good morning, members of the leadership of the IADB, of the System of Cooperation of the Air Forces of America, and the staff of the plant and administrative staff of the IADB, of the Permanent Secretariat of the SECOFA, international organizations, presentators, and public in general, and friends of the press. It is a pleasure for me to share with you this very meaningful moment, approaching a key topic that always requires attention to strengthen and improve the operational procedures that we carry out, besides promoting actions that are responsible and to motivate the managers of the emergency response systems, both civilian and military, that put into practice their capabilities to save lives in moments of crisis provoked by the natural disasters. We are referring here to the operations of humanitarian assistance and response to disasters. We reiterate our thankfulness for the presence to this seminar on the prevention and response to disasters and the implement of airspace means. To continue, I'm going to introduce Brigadier General of the Mexican Army, Marco Antonio Alvarez Reyes, Chair of the Council of Delegates of the IADB, who is going to give the opening remarks. Good morning to all in this audience on the seminar for the prevention and response to disasters and the employment of airspace means. On behalf of the IADB, of Brigadier Flavio Oliveira Pinto and Major General Hickam, the cooperation of the Armed Forces of America, Colonel Masidi, and the Council of Delegates of the IADB, I welcome you very warmly. It is an honor to initiate this event that gathers many important people of different institutions on the lessons learned and good practices in the operations of humanitarian assistance operations. These 2 days, we're going to talk about key issues to strengthen our common understanding and to create a network of professionals expert in different issues. Our objective is to be able that through this action we can share the lessons learned that will help establish a common reference for the attention and prevention in face of different climate change. And we are sure that this seminar is going to help us understand better the different disasters that our nations are prone to. We live in a context that is more vulnerable every day and exposed to disasters and other different threats as well, on many occasions worsened by the effects of climate change. This is why it is essential to create awareness on the importance of strengthening our capabilities in a multilateral and interagency environment to respond to these situations. These days, we will have the valuable participation of the following entities: the Military Directorate of Emergency Assistance of Argentina, the Military Unit of Emergencies of Spain, the General Coordinator of Support Operations to the State of the Ministry of Defense of Brazil, and the World Food Program of the United Nations Organization, as well as the Humanitarian Rescue Unit of Honduras. And we will also listen to the experiences and lessons learned of the air forces of Ecuador, Guatemala, Mexico, and Peru, who will share their challenges and how they faced these challenges. I wish to express a sincere thank you to all of you for your attention and to the cooperation of disasters of the IADB and to the leadership of the Permanent Secretariat of the System of Cooperation of the Air Forces of America for making possible this event. And I also thank all the collaborators of this IADB and to the Inter-American Defense College, especially to the staff of telematics, logistics, and the moderators who have worked intensely to organize this seminar. To end, I'm certain that this event represents a great opportunity to strengthen our bonds of cooperation and mutual trust, always in benefit of security and integrity of our nations. I hope that it will be the first of many others to come that will allow us to continue working together for a better future in our hemisphere and the world. I wish you all a productive seminar, an enriching seminar, and for you to enjoy the knowledge and the experiences of our experts. Thank you for your participation. Thank you very much, Brigadier General Marco Antonio Alvarez Reyes, for your opening remarks in this very important event. Your message moves us to promote multilateral integration of resources, capacities, and cooperation for the efficient coordination of humanitarian assistance projects, which is a commitment for all the military and civilians that respond to their people in moments of crisis. The Seminar for the Prevention and Response to Disasters and the Employment of Aerospace has been organized by the IADB through the Division of Cooperation of Disasters and the System of Cooperation of the Air Forces of America through its Permanent Secretariat, which has the purpose of sharing important information that is transcendental and relevant to strengthen the mutual understanding necessary to create a network of military and civilian professionals. Besides, offer a standardized reference for the mitigation of disasters due to the effects of climate change. Allow the public to understand the current challenges as well as to create awareness on the commitment to integrate in a more responsible and effective way the resources for the execution of operations of this type in a joint, combined, and interagency environment. Today, we have 6 presentations that will last 20 minutes each, with a break of 10 minutes in between the fourth and fifth presentation, concluding with the closing remarks around 1:30 in the afternoon. During the development of the seminar, our participants will be able to send questions through the messages in the YouTube channels, which will be responded by our speakers at the end of their presentations. And we will also have simultaneous interpretation in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Likewise, I request that you use the chat in a cordial manner without issuing any opinions and keeping the questions within the scope of the presentations. Remember that the conferences are going to be taped and will be available in our YouTube channels. Each one of you will receive a certificate for your participation, and together with that, a questionnaire of satisfaction that we request you to fill, because it is a very valuable tool for the organizers in order to increase the quality of our future events. Dear audience, we notify that the data, information, opinions, and comments issued or expressed by all the speakers are of their own responsibility. We are pleased to initiate the panel with the participation of Colonel Pablo Alberto Filippini of the Argentinian Army, who highlights with a solid track as a military and academic. Right now, he is the military director of assistance in emergencies of the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of the Republic of Argentina, where he applies his vast experience to support humanitarian assistance. He has a BA in Strategy and Organization by the War College, and also in Technologies of Education, and has a postgraduate in Human Resources. He has expanded his knowledge in international institutions such as the Advanced Corps of Engineers in the School of Fort Wood, Missouri in 1996, and Chief of Staff in the War School, Maintenance, Peacekeeping, and Resolving International Conflicts in the Institution of Peace Operations, logistic support to the operations of peacekeeping, and a trainer of trainers, and masters in geopolitical strategies. He has also held very important leadership positions. He has been the head of the Company of Engineers for the NATO in Kosovo, 2013, head of the Engineer Battalion in Mountains in Mendoza, director of the School of Engineers of the Argentinian Army, director of the Center of Joint Training for Peacekeeping Operations. He has been deployed to peacekeeping operations in the former Yugoslavia in 1994, and in Iraq, Kuwait in 1997, which complements his profile as a versatile professional trained to face different challenges in the military and humanitarian fields. In the next 20 minutes, he will introduce the topic, the Armed Forces of Argentina in Civilian Protection Operations, from the Military Assistance of Emergencies, ALMAE, the highest level of military conduction. Good morning, Colonel. The audience is yours. Good morning to all of you. I thank the presentation of Colonel Manzano. As she said, I'm the Colonel of Engineers, Pablo Filippini, military director of emergency assistance of the operational command, depending of the armed forces of the Republic of Argentina. I thank and I feel honored to be able to give this presentation today in this very important seminar that is so important for all our armed forces. And I thank the IADB that has helped us to participate in it. And I feel honored for this. And I thank Colonel Mariano Rivas very especially for the organization and the management for the development of this seminar. Today, as Colonel Manzano said, I'm going to talk about the participation of the armed forces of Argentina in civilian protection operations and what is the duty of the military directorate has in emergencies that I lead at the highest level of the military conduction. This is the agenda that we're going to follow in the 20 minutes. It is seems a long agenda, but in reality, it seeks to mark those aspects that I thought were the most important for you. And basically, it allows me to adjust myself to the valuable 20 minutes that the organization of this seminar gave me. So we're going to talk first of how we manage the highest level of the political conduction for civilian protection operations and how, after that, we employ the armed forces to provide the support in an emergency or catastrophe, and how we organize the different modes of the armed forces and the organization that I lead, and what are the main supports for the assistance and humanitarian uh, aids or assistance that had to be provided by our armed forces in the last 5-year period. And we will also see how, from the highest level, we train in a joint and combined manner to materialize the support in an efficient manner. Starting with the specific area of the topics that we're going to talk about, in our Republic of Argentina, we understand that all the actions or operations for civilian protection are at the highest level of the political conduction and is the responsibility of our president to give special attention to that. For this, at the highest level of political conduction, we have the national system for risks, SINAGIR, that is supported on two main pillars. On the one hand, the Federal Council, that is constituted by the representatives of the different provinces and municipalities of our country. The Republic of Argentina is a federal republic, and each one of the provinces is autonomous and are part of our national organization and are also part of this Federal Council, as well as the civilian protection and the provincial protection. But I want to make a reference specifically to the other column that is the national concept. That is the National Council that the SINAGIR relies on, that is comprised of the grassroots organizations and the representatives of the ministries that are part of the presidential cabinet. In Argentina, we have 9 ministries, and these are part of the National Council, together with NGOs and other organizations of the private sector that can also contribute in the planning or assistance in catastrophes or help with the communities. From this group of ministers, we have the Ministry of Defense, the National, and From there, we have the participation of the armed forces. This ministry, within its organization, has a deputy secretariat that will tell you what its duties are, and through which it employs the armed forces through an organization that depends of the Joint Chief of Staff and that I depend on, which is the operational command of the armed forces, that in our country is responsible for the planning, conduction, and execution of all the operations that are being developed. So they are the ones that conduct the operations, peacekeeping operations and Antarctic operations. And in this case, they also lead operations that have to do with civilian protection. And then we move to the units and organizations that are deployed throughout our country of the Army, the Air Force, and the Navy that definitely are going to be the executing arm and the ones that will materialize the support according to the requests received by our armed forces. The problem of civil protection is a matter that is born from the head of our government. And the armed forces can see, as you can see in this slide, you can see how they use the armed forces to support emergencies. As we said before, in our federal country, each one of the municipal and provincial governments has in its jurisdictions the different mechanisms and tools to immediately respond to any emergency that could be produced in their areas of work. But when this emergency surpasses that power, then they have to ask for help to the federal government through the Ministry of Defense. And then we are at the second phase of the cycle where this organization that depends of the Ministry of Defense, which is the Deputy Secretariat for Executive Coordination in Emergencies, responds to this request when the provincial governments have surpassed all their powers and then asks for help to the armed forces and does all the pertinent coordinations necessary. And with the Minister of Defense orders the Joint Chief of Staff the employment or the support of the armed forces to cover this need that was requested by one of the provinces. Within the Joint Chief of Staff, as I said before, we have the command of the armed forces, and within this operational command is the military unit for assistance, which is responsible for advising the operational commander in the conduction, coordination, and employment of the forces for a request for help. Once this support has been planned, the operational command gives the orders to all the elements of the Army and Air Force and Navy to do with what they do deployed throughout the territory. Once we see how this civilian protection comes down from the highest political level and how this request for help is incorporated at the operational command, we see here how the military emergency coordination that has the mission of coordinating and leading civilian protection operations at the highest level of the armed forces organizes in three departments: risk management, training department, and that have certain divisions. And the most important ones are here, and the plans department as well. And the computer organization that allows us to follow live and online all the activities in support of the disaster, to analyze and have a classification of the different civilian protection operations. We recognize three modes, which are divided into two large groups. Those that are carried out within the national territory, or the ones that are going to be international due to the requirement of a friendly country. Let's concentrate on the ones that are developed nationally, that are divided into two particular situations. Those that are produced without having declared an emergency, that we call support to the communities, which are the ones that are usually done by the elements deployed through our country to satisfy a requirement that of a community. As an example, we have the sanitary or health campaigns that, and one that is carried out right now in Rio Paraná, or medical assistance as well in different isolated localities in our country, as well as the support to the help, maybe in response to what a municipality has requested, maybe a bridge that fell and rebuild it, because or the maintenance of a bridge, because the bridge is necessary for certain services. So these are activities that are carried out locally by the elements employed. And with the Ministry of Defense, it's okay, they carry them out. On the other hand, we have those activities that are materialized within the territory, but by means of a declared alert. And that is how we start to operate. The operational command of the armed forces starts to operate, leading that operation and identifying it as a humanitarian assistance. And finally, within this classification, we also find those assistances that are developed internationally when another country requires the support of the capabilities of our armed forces in cases of emergency, and we call those humanitarian assistance. We can see here the organization and the deployment of our forces to respond to these emergencies or these requirements made by our citizens. Basically, our country has 16 joint commands, emergency commands that are supported or backed up by the different commands in the different units of the Army and the Air Force, Army, or the Navy. And when there is an emergency, then the military command has to respond. And when the emergency is declared, this military commander will tend to this requirement for aid, not only through the organic means that it has, because he is the commander of the army, but at the same time, once the emergency has been declared and the joint command has been set up, then they dispose of all the means of the Air Force and Navy as well, together with the army, that are within its jurisdiction. And at the same time, they have the power of requiring the employment of any other means from the other joint commands of the area of emergency through requirements that is channeled through the operational command. So this is basically the deployment and the organization that our armed forces have from the highest level with the MI and on the territory with the joint commands for emergency to respond in an efficient manner to any requirement made by our citizens. Given the importance that is civilian protection at the highest level, we have an institution called SINAHIR that advises in emergencies and whenever the armed forces are required to assist. And I thought it was important then to present what are the main contributions that our armed forces have given throughout the last 5 years. The first, I want to highlight the support that our armed forces gave to the Republic of Bolivia in 2019 during the forest fires in the region of Santa Cruz de la Sierra. This support had the participation of more than 200 men that were deployed from Buenos Aires and the Northeast region in an operation that extended for more than 45 days to provide support to the brigades and Bolivian forces in the fight against these terrible fires that were produced in that region. In 2020, all the joint commands of the emergency zones were activated to offer their capabilities in face of the COVID pandemic. In this operation to support the communities with the civilian protection was led by the highest level of the armed forces. And in reality, it was a great mitigation effect and a great collaboration to face all the needs that the pandemic was causing among our population. In 2024, this year, and due to the severe floods that were produced in the state of Rio Grande do Sul in Brazil, our country or our armed forces were required by our sister republic, and we attended sending some water potabilizing plants, and 130 members were deployed by air, and they were working for more than 30 days and potabilizing and distributing drinking water, not only for the members of the armed forces and the people of the civilian defense that were taking care of the needs of the population, but also to the Brazilian population that did not have this vital resource. This year as well, at the beginning of the year, in Chubut, at the interior of our country, our armed forces went to provide support for the forest fires with all our capabilities, and also providing advisory and assistance to the COEs, the operation centers that had been established by the provincial government, and also health assistance for the evacuation and primary assistance of the responders. We also gave communication support and rationing and air and land transportation and strategic transportation, transporting the responders to other parts of the country, to the southern part of Argentina in the Patagonia. In the Patagonia and throughout 2024, we also supported the intense snows that caused the social isolation. And we communicated towns and provided medicines and food and other needs that the population had due to the strong snows that fell. And as I said, right now we're developing in the northeast of Argentina, near the Paraná River, the social sanitary campaign by the Navy of Argentina, and together with the doctors of the Army and the Air Force, we are helping the populations that are isolated and that require health assistance in our country. To conclude, and not exceed the 20 minutes that were given to me, as well as our armed forces can support in military operations and all the activities of civilian protection. We conduct a joint planning course in civilian protection that is carried out every year for the direct advisors of the emergency command, where they are given the guidelines for the operations of these activities throughout the year. And in the combined and joint environment, every year with Chile and Brazil, we do joint and combined exercises with Brazil in integration, and with Chile, the ones that are called Solidarity, that are part of a cycle of planning that lasts for 3 years, where the first year we do the planning, the second an exercise, a cabinet exercise, and the third year, the third one. And this year we were not able to carry out the exercise that was scheduled on the terrain in the Republic of Brazil because the floods at the Rio Grande do Sul caused the river to turn into some disproportionate floods. So with Chile, 30 days ago, the cabinet exercise in Santiago de Chile was a total success and was the preamble for the exercise on the terrain that is going to be carried out in 2025 at the south of the Republic of Chile. So we can see how, from the highest level of political conduction, we take care of all the civil protection problems and support to communities with helping all the provinces and the municipalities once their capabilities are overpassed and they require the assistance of the armed forces. And we carry out these operations through the Vladimir, and the armed forces organize themselves and deploy themselves to the terrain for their support, as we have seen that we have done in the last years, both to the population of Argentina and other countries, and how we also train to make more effective the support when required. With this, I finish my presentation. I just passed 2 minutes, and I'm open to questions if there are any.
Muchas gracias, Coronel Filippini.
Thank you very much, Colonel, for your presentation. We have come to the question and answer section. There's many questions that we got through our inbox in the YouTube channel, but however, due to time, we will only do one of them. So in the case that there's an emergency that requires the support of the armed forces, who will assume the cost of the operation of support to that emergency? Thank you for your question. I think it's very interesting. As we said, I think I said this initially, the main mission of the armed forces in the Argentinian Republic is to be prepared to defend the highest objectives for national interest. So to be able to use the monopoly of the force of the state to defend the interests of the state. That's why the budget for the armed forces for training of its troops is addressed for this main objective. However, if there is an event of emergency that requires the intervention and the support of our elements, be it the armed forces, the Marine, or the Air Force, the means available and the resources that were assigned will be used. Once this emergency was taken care of and the problem was solved, and once we have established the stabilization of the area, we will start of this period of reimbursement of the budget that was used to take care of this emergency, which definitely is used. So in case we have the possibility, the state has the possibility, the state that requested the support, that they requested this support for this emergency, and in the case that this state, and because of the necessities that they have due to this emergency, our defense ministry, or through the economy ministry of the nation, they can reimburse this expense that they made in order to take care of this emergency. So whoever requests the support is the person who will take care of the expenses. And if they don't have the capability to do so, because due to the emergency, then the Ministry of Defense, or also through the Ministry of Economy, they will reimburse those expenses to the armed forces to take care of this particular issue. I don't know if this was clear or if there's any other questions. Thank you. This was very interesting, the procedure in your country. So, Mr. Colonel from the Argentinian Army, Pablo Filippini, in the name of the IADB and of the cooperation system of the Air Forces, we thank you for this brilliant presentation, and we assure you that these are very important tools to improve our procedures in our hemisphere. Thank you very much. Thank you to you. I'm very thankful. It was an honor for me to be here, and I'm available for anything that you may need. Thank you very much.
Continuando con nuestra programación.
So moving on with our agenda, the reduction of risk of disasters has to do with saving lives, means of life and subsistency, and changing the way of thinking of people. So it is about moving from response to risk management of disasters in order to reduce the vulnerability and the exposure of the communities. And with this, I'm glad to present our second presenter, Lieutenant Colonel of the Army of Spain, Juan Ramón Sánchez Chana. And he came into the General Academy, Military Academy in 1985. He was promoted to Lieutenant Colonel in February of 2011. He had several titles, among them the Special Operations Course in 1990 and 1991, the Superior Intelligence Course and Security of the Army in 2002, a Master's in Direction of Emergencies from the European University of Madrid in 2009, a Risk Management course in the Military School of Emergencies in 2016, a Master's in Intervention and Coordination for Emergencies and Catastrophes with the Polytechnic University of Valencia, also the 26th course on Human Resources at the Center of National Defense, and he has also been part of the Royal Guard from 1992 to 1996, and also a Special Operations of the Army, Chief of the Intelligence Unit in Canarias, Commander of the 3rd Section of Operations of the Battalion of Interventions for Emergencies of the Military Unit of Emergencies, and from 2009 as of today, he has been in different areas of the General Military Unit for Emergencies. So with this resume, we will present this new presenter with the topic Lessons Learned and Good Practices of the Armed Forces in Response to Disasters. Practical case in Spain. Please, Colonel Sanchez, the floor is yours.
Teniente Coronel, muchas gracias por sus palabras introductorias.
Thank you for your introduction. First, I would like to thank the IADB for this invitation for Spain. I am the representative and I'm a member of the Unit for Emergencies. So without further ado, I will start my presentation.
Mi coronel, ¿nos puede usted abrir la
Colonel,
cámara,
may
por
you
favor,
please
para que
open up your
se vea su
camera
imagen?
so that we can look at your image? Yes.
Perfecto, ya se está viendo la
Perfect. Now we
presentación.
can see your presentation.
Las situaciones reales son las...
The real situations,
Aquí. Su imagen me está evitando
this
el
image
poder hacer
is,
la presentación.
I cannot do the presentation.
A ver si vuelvo atrás.
Let me go back.
No sé por qué motivo no puedo compartir en estos
I don't know
momentos.
why I cannot
Arriba.
share this right now.
Bueno, su presentación se proyecta, pero
So
no
this
está
presentation
en
is
modo
being projected,
presentación, mi
but
coronel.
it's not in presentation mode, my colonel. Yes. Yes, 1 second.
A ver si puede abrir su cámara.
Maybe you can open up your camera.
Voy a un momento al elemento técnico.
I'm sorry, I'm having technical issues.
Mi coronel, usted puede manipular su
My colonel, can you
presentación.
manipulate your
En ese
presentation,
modo
right? You
en el
can
que está.
modify your presentation right now in that mode you're in.
Bueno, por favor,
So then
podemos
please,
comenzar de esa manera.
we can start in this way. It doesn't matter.
No habrá ningún problema, mi coronel.
There's
si
no
damos
problems,
paso,
my colonel, if we
continuamos con la
can continue with the
presentación en ese
presentation
modo. Todos
in
vemos,
this
tenemos una clara
mode.
imagen de su
Everybody can see,
presentación.
we can clearly see your presentation.
El problema es que yo no puedo pasar
The
las
problem is that I cannot,
porque no la domino. A ver si ahora
I cannot change the slides from here
es que no me deja.
because it's not allowing me. It's not letting me.
Ahora.
Now.
Entiendo que ya lo están viendo.
Perfecto.
Okay, I
Perfecto.
understand that
Sí,
you're now
coronel, ya
looking at it.
estamos.
Yes, perfect.
Bueno, pues con el retraso inicio
Okay,
la
sorry for
presentación.
the delay, so I'm going to start with this presentation.
Primero la idea de
So
mi
first,
presentación
the
es
idea of my presentation
enmarcar
is
este tipo de unidad militar
to
que creo
give
que
you
es
an idea of
diferente
this military unit,
al resto de
which is
unidades,
different to the
ya
rest of the
que
units,
dentro de las Fuerzas Armadas
because
españolas
within the
es una
Spanish
unidad
armed
dedicada
forces,
exclusivamente
this
a
is a
intervenir
unit
en emergencias.
exclusively
Y
dedicated
además de
to
intervenir en
intervening in
emergencias,
emergencies.
tiene
And
la
besides that,
función
it has the function
dentro del más
of,
alto nivel de las
within the
emergencias,
highest
llevar a
level
la
of
dirección de las
emergencies,
operaciones de
to
emergencia
direct
del
the
Reino
operations of
España.
emergencies within the realm of Spain.
Va a seguir
So
este
this
guión.
presentation will continue based on this. So I have divided all of the presentation in main points, and at the end of these important points, I'm going to provide a series of recommendations based on the experiences from my unit, lessons learned and good practices, so that the audience can see what are the issues and what are the solutions that at any given time we have established for these points. Whenever we create a military unit that is exclusively dedicated for the intervention in emergencies and in order to direct operations of emergencies.
Bien,
So why was this unit created? Because there was a time where there were a lot of catastrophes in Spain. There was no response from the state. There was nothing to face these emergencies at all levels. There was a region that requested support, or at any given time, for example, there was an emergency, an event that was declared an emergency at a national level. And also there was a disparity of capabilities within the region of Spain. There was no that's why the unit was created. And there was the need to have something that the authorities of the state were sure that it would work, an operative instrument. And everything happened because the society was requiring it. The society was requiring a response from the state. Why were the armed forces selected? Why did the politicians see that it was necessary to get the armed forces involved within this type of work? Well, definitely because of the preparation that the military has. We're always doing procedures, we're always very well prepared, the flexibility of being able to adapt to different situations, the flexibility of changing very fast, of modality, of deployment, of personnel, and above all, because we are trained and we have the mentality to participate in situations of chaos, such as war. And therefore, it is a very versatile instrument when introducing the military in this type of jobs of emergencies. So in order to generate this unit, the first thing that was done was to adapt the law. And within the law, it was established that there was a rule that was approved by the Constitution. It was an organic law, the organic law of defense. And it was in 2005. And that was the paradigm that changed the responsibilities of the armed forces, because from there and on, as we said previously, besides doing military defense to the nation, also the armed forces had the obligation to preserve the safety of our citizens in situations where there was a risk of calamities. And due to this mandate of the state, we created this unit. Then in time, this unit has been developing internally within the Ministry of Defense a lot of laws. First, it was the organic law of defense, national defense. Then it was the protocol of intervention of the unit, where we established what the procedure is for activation and work procedure, and which works the unit was going to be a part of. And then a long time, we established also a basic organization of the armed forces. And then in 2019, we did the organization and functioning of the military unit, and in establishing the structure and the functions for each of the unit. Then, as we said previously, this is the protocol, this is what is the mission of the UME. So to intervene in any place of the national territory and foreign territory to contribute together with the institutions of the state and the public administration for calamities. Then besides, in this norm of the state, we also established the UME as the first responder for the armed forces. So we have the capability to use the means of the rest of the armed forces to solve situations of emergency. So we are able to use all the capabilities of the armed forces. So as recommendations or lessons learned on this part of legislation, this is an extract, and so that a unit is created within a state, a unit like this, there needs to be a real need from the state. There needs to be something that truly prioritizes that there's a response from the state, because there's other solutions. There is already a firefighter unit, for example, or other security bodies in the state and who are implied, and then they can also solve these problems through these bodies. And so this employment of the armed forces needs to come from a political decision. It is a big decision, and it is a very important change. A change of tasks, of civilian tasks and military tasks. And so this is necessary to dedicate this exclusively. For example, if there's a unit that is exclusively dedicated for civil situations, this is a very highly political decision. And also in the creation, there needs to be a nucleus, a technical military nucleus of creation directly, who is in charge of creating this unit. And this nucleus or this team needs to be separated from the army. It needs to depend directly. It doesn't need to be under the Ministry of Defense. Also, there needs to be a full rule development, civil and military as well, and it needs to be adapted because the implication of the armed forces and the military clashes with all types of emergencies. So it needs to be legislated, all the norms and the implications of how we're going to intervene during emergencies. And also we need to be outside of the organic organization of the army so that it is not identified with something specific. We don't need to belong to any of the armies. So definitely we are of the armed forces, but we don't need to belong to any of the other units. And then, as I already said, our main mission needs to be intervening in catastrophes. The secondary mission, of course, is the national defense, of course. Then organization and structure. So this unit has a general tenant, and then it has 5 battalions. There's one unit that is, for example, risks. There's other logistics unit and another battalion of transmissions so that we can control at the highest level. There's also a unit of general quarters to create these deployments. And then also it has a military school for emergencies so that we train ourselves. And also we have operating control and the air forces. It doesn't depend organically from the air forces, but in order to take care of emergencies, but we have also the battalion of helicopters for emergencies. And we have this geographical distribution in the Spanish state, in the peninsula, and also in the islands, Canarian Islands. And our staff right now, we are 3,000, and most of us are in land, but also we have also the army. And within the total, we have a 7% of staff of women that are women. Then we have a variety of material, of resources for all types of risks. And right now we are involved in this change because we've been here operating for 18 years. And so we're changing the initial materials that we have, the green line, which was military material. And now we're using other materials. So we're using these trucks and we are mounting these bags, and this vehicle of interventions is not for general loading, but it is against, for example, fires or extracting water and mud. So we're changing the backpack, let's say. This is how we call it, the backpack. So our capabilities, our generic capabilities, for example, is fight against forest fires, floods, snow, and other phenomena, also earthquakes and big emergencies. And also we have these special capabilities such as rescue, urban rescue, also water rescue, air rescue. So we have divided the big units in general areas, and we have other specific teams for these types of rescue operations. So as I already said, we want to direct also big operations and catastrophes. So we have these resources here, which are, they go through 9 nodes of communications and 70 positions so that we can control this big catastrophe in the field. We have telecommunication material also, several telecommunication materials. And also we have, in the last 10 years, we've created this military school for emergencies, which provides a response for all of our training and internal needs. And this training for all levels troops or officers in chief, trains in basic aspects, and also there's special topics such as intervention and direction to interventions. So we do all of this through our school. And then lessons learned from this side is I've done also a small summary. So of course there needs to be a national distribution, a commitment of intervention of 2 hours. We have established 2 hours. So we need to be committed with the different organisms in order to make an intervention. In Spain, it is 2 hours, and in 2 hours we are there. So also we need to create this unit close to air bases or helicopters so that we can deploy fast the elements. And also if there's a fire, we need to be deployed quickly. Also, we need to have our own staff. And this staff is not something that will it needs to be our own staff. It doesn't need to be something that we are going to take from the joint forces. Also, there's an increase also of the general staff of the armed forces. Why? Because these two situations of creation of our own staff, because we don't want to also have this military unit to come out of the armed forces. There needs to be a lesson learned from all this whole process so that we can reach this objective. Also, we need to have the motivation, a differentiating motivation, so that also we can quickly fulfill our mission. So it may be an improvement of the professional some resume of a specific person, or maybe there's a better pay. We need to have this motive so that this unit is filled quickly. And also we need to have a joint staff and also be a big unit. So in order to have this direction and training and logistics, we need to have our own intelligence focused on emergencies, our own doctrine, our communications that are our own. So that, apart from the other armed forces units. And then reinforcement to national emergencies. We have this deployment in the territory, and each of our units has a responsibility. It has an area of responsibility. It has to establish a link with the authorities in the area permanently. It needs to be in contact with them and also with the elements of civil protection and sanitary elements. And they need to be trained. They need to participate in courses. And also they need to be invited to our trainings. So definitely we need to have a very tight link with all the authorities in those regions in order to provide a very quick response. So in total, within this creation of the unit in 2007, we have intervened in 708. We have had 708 interventions of all sorts of kinds. So as the first recommendation on this part, first I need to say that we need to have a permanent training. And so we need to improve continuously in everything. And somehow in the end, we need to be like a reference. Also, the rest of the services for emergencies are using their time in using service. We don't have service time. We are between emergency and emergency. We are getting ready. We are getting prepared. We're getting trained, going to courses. And this is a very important point of this unit. Then also a permanent training with the regions, with the autonomous communities, which I was mentioning before, to also be aware that we're the first responders. So behind us, we have all of the armed forces. So we need to maintain this link with the rest of the armed forces, because afterwards, we may have to use them during disasters. And also, whenever we have a relationship with the organisms, we don't have to be exclusive for anybody. We need to be cross-cutting to participate in all types of emergencies, not being just, for example, exclusive for civil protection, or, for example, health emergencies or environmental emergencies. We don't have to be exclusive for any of these. And then also what's important is for this part of emergencies, of national emergencies, What's important in the national and international environment is to participate in forums, because through that, for example, through this seminary, we increase our knowledge, our capabilities, and then we can use this in the unit. Then, in an operational direction for big catastrophes at a national level, which is an emergency of national interest, here are the different levels. We are in the lowest level, which is DOE, the operational level, and MOP also. So above us, there's two political levels, the strategic level and the political level. So this means that we're not alone in this operational direction of an emergency, but also we are subordinated to these other two levels that make decisions. And so for us, it is important to move from an emergency and a catastrophe whenever there's a high level of dead people and also people who are left without a home. Then we move from emergency to catastrophe. Right now, we have this situation, although it hasn't been declared that Valencia, there's an emergency of national interest, but we're definitely involved with all of our experience of operational experience of disaster management because of the number of people dead and also people who have been left without a home in that area. Also, what the UME provides in this catastrophe situation, the catastrophe is chaos, and what we do is that we do the operating direction of the emergency and we provide tranquility. So whatever we do through our plans, the procedures that we have is to provide security, provide information, and provide security in the solving of this situation. So we need to have these contingency plans. Also, we need to have at hand the armed forces and the bodies of security of the state, and thereby we can initiate the response to the emergency. So we need to be sure that we can respond and have this contingency plan. And this is a slide where we can see the complexity of a solution for a big catastrophe or big emergency. And we need to coordinate through our control commands. And then now these are the recommendations on this part. So we need to think that the main mission is to face these catastrophes. And therefore, we need to always be prepared. A unit that is only intervening and directing, their biggest concern needs to be training. We need to train with everybody. Everybody needs to be trained and prepared, all the organisms. We don't have to be also part of anybody. We need to have contingency plans. And also we need to promote international relations to be able to have a military external support. Then interventions, foreign interventions. These are the countries where we act. We have this mechanism for the European Union. So our neighbor countries, France, Morocco, Portugal, and Algeria, and also countries in America. And here we have had 32 operations, foreign operations, 26 operations, foreign operations, and 6 operations of support for maintenance for peace. So I'm going to talk a bit about this mechanism of the European Union for humanitarian aid. So we have 34 countries, 28 from the UE. And then in the deployment during emergencies, it might be through this team of the European Union, and everybody is implicated somehow within this whole complexity, and all through this unit of the European Union, we have seen the advantages. For example, funding, because the European Union provides funding in the preparation and certification for these units. And every time we intervene, we have a return of 85% of the money we spent on the operation. So every time we can, we go to the European Union. Then within this mechanism of the European Union, we have forest fires, for example, rescue in mountains, water rescue, rescue in caves, RPAS, and also advising. The module that we most often use is urban rescue, and we are very well trained in this. And within this part of interventions, foreign interventions, we can also say this, that although we participate with many organizations, we have to rely on an organism that provides the biggest return, be it for the funding or prestige, etc. So we need to focus on the support of this organization. Then also on this part of foreign intervention, it provides new knowledge. Also, we need to be present, be aware that whenever we do this, we have to separate two parts: the unit that is intervening, where we have the commander for routinary operations, and is also the link for the organisms. So we need to separate those elements. And also we need for this also foreign operations, we need to also be ready and quick. So if the interest is going to, the state that is interested is going to also provide transportation, then we need to be prepared and also have a cooperation with Air Force so that whenever we can send material, or for example, if there's dangerous material, then we need to transport this also. And then in the end, for conclusions, the armed forces. Why do you use the armed forces? Because it is a very efficient element of the state and also provides trust to society and tranquility. And also because in the end, we have the leadership for the emergencies. And every day we are training and perfecting all of our procedures and our plans, emergency plans. And we're always like, for example, the first responders. And also, why are we the first responders? Because our unit is cheap compared to others. It's a cheap unit to use for emergencies. And also it has high prestige for the armed forces. It provides high prestige for the armed forces in society. And also we need to take into account that this unit is the nation, it's Spain. And that is very important for our prestige. And then operational conclusions. It is the channel for the rest. Has a resolution capability. It also has a very unique capabilities. And at the tactical level, it is very fast, versatile, and flexible, and self-sufficient operation-wise and logistically. And this is the end. And if you have any questions, I am available to respond.
Muchas gracias por su presentación, Teniente Coronel Sánchez. Y hemos llegado a la sesión de preguntas y respuestas. Lamentablemente, por cuestiones de tiempo, únicamente
Thank you for
atenderemos
your
una
presentation.
pregunta.
We only have time for one
La tengo aquí
question,
en mis manos.
and I have it here in my
Y
hands now.
la pregunta es,
And the question
¿cómo
is,
dirigen en
how
España el
do you
apoyo
lead in
del resto de
In
las
Spain,
Fuerzas
the
Armadas
support
en
of
las
the remaining
emergencias?
armed forces during an emergency?
Sí, es una buena
It
pregunta.
is a very good
Bien, hay que
question.
diferenciar
We have to make a
dos
difference
situaciones diferentes. Si
on two
nosotros tenemos
things. If we
responsabilidad
have the
en la dirección
responsibility
de las
in the
operaciones,
leadership
si
of
no
the
tenemos
operations, or if we're not
responsabilidades. Si no
responsible
tenemos
for leading the
responsabilidades,
operations, if not,
nosotros aportamos
then
nuestras
we provide
fuerzas
our
propias de la Unidad
forces
Militar de Emergencias
of the
y a la
emergency
vez
military unit,
llevamos
and
un
at the same
catálogo
time
de
we have
capacidades
a
de los
catalog
distintos de las
of
Fuerzas Armadas
capabilities of the
permanentemente
armed
para
forces that
apoyar a
are
las
permanent
operaciones.
in support of
Tiene
emergencies.
dispuesto la autoridad
And
civil esas
the
fuerzas
civilian
permanentemente, las fuerzas del AUME,
authorities,
y
do
a la
they
vez
have the
llevamos
UME
simplemente
forces?
un
And we
catálogo, una base de
also
datos de
take a
capacidades.
catalog or a
El
database of
organismo civil que
capabilities, and the
dirige
civilian
esas operaciones
organization that is leading
elige
those
esas
operations will
capacidades y
select
nosotros, a
those
través de la Unidad Militar
capabilities,
de
and
Emergencias,
through the
activamos
emergency
esas
military
capacidades.
unit, we
La otra
activate
modalidad
those capacities. The other mode is when we have the responsibility of an emergency. Then we have all the other armed forces in time to plan the response, our own response, and the response through all the capabilities of the armed forces to solve that situation. That gives us like a greater and better response. And we are continuously adding to the command. And we have this capability. And we're continuously in contact with the rest of the armed forces, and we know what their capabilities are. And we have the capability of giving the best response with the aid of the other parts of the armed forces. And I think that with this, I have answered your question. I'm at your disposal right now. Thank you very much for your kind response. Lieutenant Colonel Juan Ramon Sanchez Chana, on behalf of the Inter-American Defense Board, we would like to thank you for having presented a general outlook of the organization and operation of the Military Emergency Unit of Spain. Thank you very much. Continuing with our program, we are honored to present our third panel member, Colonel Aviator Ivan Flavio Sena Veloso, Air Force of Brazil, who took this position on 31st August 2020. In February 2024, was designated coordinator in the deputy head of the Joint Chief of Staff of the Joint Forces of the Armed Forces of the Ministry of Defense of Brazil. He is a representative of the Ministry of Defense in the National Council for Protection and Civil Defense, a college organization and consultative that is coordinated by the National Secretariat for Protection and Civil Defense. In 2004, he worked in the first binational exercise for Integration 2022-2024 in coordination with the Armed Forces of Argentina, within the framework of the support to the armed forces for the for protection and civil defense in case of great catastrophes. Also in 2024, he participated in the seminar and the civil military interagency one promoted by the Department of Canada for military training in the Joint Center for Peacekeeping Operations, CICOPAC, in Santiago, Chile. Today, he will talk about Operation Tacuari and Operation Pantanal, lessons learned. Colonel Sena Veloso, good morning. The floor is yours. Good morning.
Me ouvem bem? Conseguem ver a apresentação?
Can you hear me well? Can you see the presentation?
Sí, todos escuchamos, mi coronel.
Yes, we can all hear you, Colonel.
Estamos viendo también su presentación.
We're also watching your presentation.
Um momento.
Mi coronel Sena, ¿nos escucha?
Can you hear us, Colonel?
Sim, é só ajeitar, gentileza.
Yes.
Muito
Yes,
bom
I'm
dia,
just adjusting.
senhoras e senhores.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Colonel Sena,
No Ministério.
and I work right now at the ministry.
Estou aqui representando
I'm representing
mais especificamente a coordenadoria.
and I'm going to talk about the coordination. And it is an honor
e tão cara a todos nós, que é a troca de experiências e lições aprendidas.
The exchange of experience and lessons learned in the combat to natural disasters.
Dessa forma, para que nós consigamos
In this way,
começamos
so that we
esse
can
breve sumário, inicialmente
start
com a
with this brief summary
proteção e defesa civil de
about protection and civil defense.
forma que na sequência sobre nas quais temos as lições aprendidas. E, por fim,
We have the lessons learned,
finalmente falaremos sobre as lições aprendidas nessas duas operações, em
and
termos aí
we
das nossas respostas
are going to
a
talk
esses
about these
desastres
operations in terms
no
of our responses to the disasters that have happened in Brazil. And finally, we're going to be talking about brief final considerations. As we can observe on the map, Brazil, as we know, is a country of continental dimensions, and on this map, what is divided in regions, we can observe due to the colors that we see from fires and wind in the different areas of the country in different times. So the country has to be prepared to act in all these demands, and for this, the use of the armed forces is fundamental. The complement law 169 states in Article 1st
Dessa forma, as Forças Armadas trabalham
subsidiary attributions. In this way, the armed forces work directly with the different segments of society for civil defense and for the governmental actions. Just as an example, assistance to disaster victims.
Desenhado, né, resumidamente.
Well, here, as if we were with the design, the Secretariat of Civil Defense and Disaster Protection is the core organ.
Ministério este que a Secretaria SEDEC e participação de vários órgãos e ministérios aqui destacar o Ministério da Defesa e o Ministério da Saúde.
Several ministries like the Minister of Defense and Health and the Ministry of Integration and Regional Development signed in 2012 a protocol for this, the actioning of this system that has a series of rules. Internally, the Ministry of Defense is divided into the Ministry of Defense and then the Joint Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces and also the General Secretariat. The civilian part, the forces, the Navy, the Army, and the Air Force of Brazil within the Ministry of Defense. In a disaster, the municipality affected declares a state of public alert. And then this state of public alarm, through the recognition of the Executive Secretariat, makes the Ministry of Integration and Regional Development work according to the protocol and mobilize in support to the persons that need it. It's called RNA. In this way, the Ministry of Defense, when they receive a requirement for support, they can act through the Navy, Army, or the Air Force of Brazil, or can act activating an operational joint command to carry out the response actions to the disaster. Initially, with this basic notion about the system and how it works, that is the Brazilian system for emergencies, we're going to talk about the operations. The Taquari 2 operation. This slide shows the elevated number of actors that were involved in Rio Grande del Sur to combat the floods, despite that they are recurrent in 2024. Something happened that was not imaginable. In its proportions and dimension. Del Sur is a province of 280 square meters and 2 million inhabitants that borders with Uruguay. The first impact of the rains were felt on April 18. And May 1st this year, the Ministry of Defense activated the joint operation Taquari 2, that is about 180 kilometers away. And at that moment, the number of municipalities affected was all these here that you can see, more than 450 of them. And we had to evacuate 2 million individuals. And to this date, we have 183 died and 23 people still missing. The principle of actuation has a phase of preparation and mitigation. These are the phases before the disaster, and after the happening, the response and recovery. During the response, we carry out all the assistance and aid operations, and we divided time with the phases of recovery that is already ongoing. This slide also shows some activities, help activities and rescue of victims activities. The next slide shows the response actions that we carried out. This slide shows some of the activities, response activities, and also the removal of garbage and debris. And the armed forces are also, well, there were more than 4,000 hours of flight, just to give you an idea of the magnitude of all this. The support of the engineers, since several regions were totally isolated due to the floods, then there was needed to intervene and to build bridges to allow the reintegration of these areas. The participation of the Brazilian army in the construction of the bridges that you can see in these pictures that were taken from the sites themselves. And finally, there was the activation of 13 field hospitals simultaneously due to the number of people that needed medical attention and medical care. And some of the peculiar characteristics of this operation, Aquarime, are these. Now we're going to talk about the Pantanal operation. This is a joint operation that happened on June 28, and this year it was anticipated because this usually happened in August, where there are more fires. Nevertheless, in 2024, there were greater number of fires than in 2020, for instance. So we started to work to help in the big fires. 230,000 square kilometers are in this area of Mato Grosso del Sur. And to the south of Mato Grosso, where the fires were taking place. The same as in the previous operation, several agents were involved, many of them from the provinces of Mato Grosso and Mato Grosso del Sur, as well as the organizations of the government. The coordinator of all the fires was the Integrated Multi-Agency Center for the Coordination of National Operations, CIMAN 2024. The staff of the agency until the first 15 days of October, worked hard. And you can see in this graphic the fires of El Pantanal month after month. Some statistical data. You can see a set of all the results. For you to have an idea, on November 4th, the fires that were extinguished were 19, and active 2, and no active point without any combat.
Bem superior ao do ano de 2020. Por isso, a expectativa de que as queimadas fossem mais alarmantes nesse ano de 2024.
Burnt areas were more alarming in 2024. Nevertheless, and despite a number of people burnt, the total number is less than in 2020 due to the joint action to respond to the combat of the fires. We note here that during the activation of the joint center, the reduction of the fires and burnt areas was reduced. More than 1,230,000 liters of water were thrown through the Pantanal from Mato Grosso. With the participation of these airplanes that threw millions of liters of water on the burnt areas, as well as the crude air logistics was 58 tons, and the rotational wings, almost 3,256 passengers were transported within the infiltration and brigadier operations. Just to give you a general idea of the joint operation Pantanal. The support and response actions. The staff is shown here on this video. You can see, can you see the slide? It doesn't appear here.
Pessoal consegue ver? Consegue me ouvir?
You can see here. Can you also listen to me?
Consegue me ouvir?
Can you hear me?
Aqui, ó. Sinal de... Sinal de internet aqui, por favor. Consegue me ouvir?
Can you hear me? There is a problem with our internet connection.
Boa tarde, consegue me ouvir agora?
Can you hear me now?
Olha o que o Sobral está escrevendo.
Sí, como muestra de que estamos vivos,
Está me
Show
ouvindo bem agora?
that
estamos teniendo algunas fallas
can you hear me
técnicas.
now?
En breve reanudaremos la
We will
presentación.
restart the presentation.
Le pedimos disculpas por estos inconvenientes.
Excuse us for the inconvenience.
Boa tarde, consegue me ouvir?
Good
Ya lo
afternoon.
escuchamos,
Can you hear me?
pero ¿podrá abrir la cámara, por favor?
And can you open the camera, please?
Só momento.
Just a minute.
Consegue me ver?
Ahí sí lo veo.
Can you see me now?
A
E
ver si-
consegue ver a apresentação?
Sí,
We will continue
estamos
with the
viendo la
presentation.
presentación, lo vemos a usted y lo escuchamos muy bien.
Yes, we can hear you and see you as well.
Puede continuar.
You may continue.
Então, a importância da delimitação.
The importance of making a delimitation between the coordination of response and the support to response actions. As we were able to see in the Taquari 2 operation, the protagonist was the SEDE, the Secretariat, the National Secretariat for Defense and Civilian Protection, and Pantanal was SIMAN. And always it was the operation coordination multi-agency one, and the Ministry of Defense participated in both, but not as the main character, but as an actor that promoted logistical support for the actions, the response actions.
Cadê?
Não tô vendo nada.
Consegue me ouvir?
Sí, sí, mi coronel, estamos
Can you
bien.
hear me?
Continuando,
Yes.
então, perdoem pela interrupção. Importância da obediência.
Excuse for the interruptions. The importance of the obedience and the actioning protocol that has been previously established. As we said, in 2012, this protocol was assigned among the three ministries, determining the flow of procedures for the management of response actions. And we also noted that it was like a corroborator of support of the Ministry of Defense and not as a main role. So in this way, the Ministry of Defense and its joint commands were able to separate the starting and ending of operations are the main characters. In this case, the two organizations that we mentioned previously. The legal security for the correct and timely reimbursement of resources for all the operations also. And so importance of the correct delimitation of the area of operations. In 2023, with the operations at Taquarin, there was a need to readjust the document referring to the actions. Initially, with the activated fund, we only took care of Rio Grande del Sur. Through the needs and also the assistance in emergencies due to the floods, this area was increased for all the southern region. With this experience of 2023 and 2024, the area of the Joint Operations Command was delimited to all the southern region and also needed to increase the scope of actors for an efficient operation. At the start of the Taquari operations, the Army carried out the transportation and the delivery of donations to the province. And you can see how the stock of the resources and the picture. But we had then needed to expand the different areas that were like warehouses for the donations. Air air donations, and we transported them and also responded to the different needs that we had, the need to bring more actors like the Latam, Azul, and air companies, as well as the Navy. And the trains were activated to be able to assist and respond to all the needs that were the most preeminent at this moment. The stocks of items that were donated grew rapidly. In a certain phase of the operation, it was necessary to disseminate the items that were more prioritary, to earmark the donations to the places where they were really needed. The need to have a close coordination for the transportation of volunteers as well, like vets, doctors, and volunteers to support the victims. These people also had their own lives and routines and the specific places to be available. So we had to have a very close coordination to carry out
necessidade de transporte e destinação de milhares de animais de estimação
this transportation through the Air Force, need for the transportation of thousands and thousands of domestic animals that were lost. Through time, the possibility of returning these animals to their families. There was a need to donate them also to new families. And in this way,
de base aérea militar, o aeroporto,
we used the military air bases and airports at both of the capital city of the province of del Sur, that was because Porto Alegre was totally flooded. As an alternative, we opted for the use of the airbase of Canoas that is just next to the capital. And after, it was fundamental for the response actions. The importance of having field hospitals with the necessary staff and resources. Due to the dimensions, we never thought that those thousands and thousands of people that needed very special care in the field hospitals allowed us, to take care of them. At the worst of the tragedy, we used the Embraer air the airplane to combat the fires, and they threw water. This airplane was able to throw just one airplane to throw almost 390 and more than 1 million. And final considerations, I highlight the importance of events like this so that we can have the exchange of experiences, lessons learned, and the participation in international happenings to exercise our response. This was at the end of 2023, and we were able to see the interaction between the two countries. The Ministry of Defense participated, and they brought many lessons learned that were used in the real Operation Taquari 2. in 2024, the exercise that happened in Chile with the participation of members of the General Coordinator for Support to improve our knowledge and the possibility to take care in cases of natural disasters was also very fundamental. Here, I'm going to close my participation. It has been a great honor to participate here, and I am at your disposal for any questions that you might have. Thank you very much. Thank you, Colonel Sena, for your presentation. It is a very interesting topic, and we have received many questions. Nevertheless, due to time constraints, we can only answer one, and it is addressed as follows. If you can talk a little bit more about the use of the airplanes, Embraer airplanes, 390, and the operations Taquari 2 and Pantanal 2, please. Thank you very much for the question. Beforehand, the operation Taquari 2
foi a primeira operação.
This was the first operation
Mi coronel Sena.
Colonel Sena,
Coronel Sena, ¿me escucha?
can you hear me?
Escuto bem. Estão me ouvindo bem?
I can hear you well. Are you seeing me?
¿Podría usted repetir
troqué
la
aqui os
respuesta?
computadores.
Could you repeat
Sí,
the
así
answer,
es.
please?
Si gusta nada más, repetimos
Just
la
repeat
respuesta.
the
Por
answer,
favor, gracias.
please.
Sim.
Thank you.
Repetir.
Well, I'm going to repeat.
Bom, com relação ao emprego da aeronave
With
KC-390...
regards to the employment of the KC-390 in the Taquari 2 operations,
A operação
the
Taquari 2
operation
foi a
Taquari
primeira
2
operação,
was the
né,
first
grande
operation
operação real
of a
em que
great,
houve o emprego.
the real operation with great importance where we employed the K-390 of the Air Force of Brazil, produced by Embraer.
Devido à magnitude
At the
dessa
beginning, and due to the magnitude of
muito
this
foi exigido da
operation,
aeronave, tanto em versatilidade
many
quanto em
demanded
disponibilidade.
versatility
No
as
início
well as
das ações
availability.
respostas,
At the beginning of the
a operação de
actions
socorro às
in
vítimas,
the
ela foi usada para fazer transporte de diversos
phase to
materiais,
aid
tanto
victims,
motores,
we transported different
embarcações,
materials like
equipes de
engines
resgate.
and
No
boats
fase
and
seguinte,
rescue
momentos seguintes,
equipment.
ela foi
In the
também
next
usada no
phase,
transporte de pets,
it was
transporte
used in the
voluntário,
transportation of
transporte de filtros
pets
para
and
atendimento à
volunteers
população,
and
transporte
filters
dos
for the
hospitais de
population
campanha, enfim,
and of the field
dezenas
hospitals
de utilizações distintas
and of
e que a aeronave se mostrou
hundreds of
bastante
other
versátil
different
e
uses
também
that, and the
com uma
airplane
disponibilidade
was
acima
very
do esperado.
versatile with the
No tocante à
availability
operação Pantanal 2,
beyond
a
what
aeronave
was
também
expected.
foi
With regards to the
diferenciada
Pantanal
no
2, the
sentido que
airplane was
ela
also
sozinha lançou mais de
very
1 milhão e
important
100 mil
because
litros
it
de água
threw more
sobre
than
o Pantanal Mato Grosso, um total de
1,100,000
milhão e 300
liters of
mil
water on the
jogados por todas as
Pantanal,
aeronaves.
1,300,000
Tamanha foi a importância do emprego
bucks of
dessa
water
aeronave
that
no
were
mar,
thrown. So
equipamento de
this is
combate
the
a incêndios
importance
nela
of
instalado,
this
que
airplane to
o governo
combat
brasileiro autorizou a compra de
fires.
segundo
The government of
equipamento
Brazil
desse, de forma
authorizes the
a
purchase
se
of a
ter
second
duas aeronaves desse
equipment
porte com essa
to
capacidade,
have
que nos vai
two
proporcionar
airplanes
uma
with this
capacidade de resposta
capacity
muito
that
maior
is going
em
to
eventos
provide
futuros.
us a
Espero ter
greater
respondido.
capacity response in future events. I hope to
Muchísimas
have
gracias
been
por su
answered your
amable
question.
respuesta.
Yes, thank you for your
Señor
kind
Coronel,
response.
Aviador Fuerza Aérea de Brasil, Iván Sena Veloso. A nombre de la Junta
Mr.
Interamericana de
Ivan
Defensa
Sena
y del
Veloso, in the
Sistema
name
de
of the
Cooperación de
On
las
behalf
IADB and the
Naciones
of
System
the
Unidas,
for
System of
Cooperation,
Cooperation of the Armed Forces of
we want
America,
to
we
thank
want
you
to
for
thank you
this
for your
brilliant
brilliant presentation. It is
interesting
interesting to
to
combine the
operation,
operationality and the operation of
our
our materials and equipment
teams
in
in
these
this type
types of
humanitarian aid
human
operations.
assistance
So thank you.
operations. Thank you very much.
Eu que agradeço. Muito obrigado a todos.
And I thank you as well. Thank you to all. And have a good afternoon.
Es necesario educar para desarrollar una cultura de prevención.
It is
Las
necessary to
personas
educate in order to
necesitan
have
que
a
se les
culture of
proporcione
prevention.
y se
People need to be
facilite
provided
el conocimiento,
and
habilidades
knowledge
y
needs to be
recursos
facilitated, and
para que
also the
puedan
skills and
protegerse de
resources
los
so that they may
desastres y de los
protect
riesgos.
themselves from disasters and risks.
Al igual que sucede en el campo de la salud
And
y
this
en
is what
el
happens
campo
also
de
in the
la
field of
circulación
health
viaria.
and
Señoras y señores, nos
traffic.
distingue el
So,
día de hoy la
Matt,
participación de
now we
nuestro
have the
cuarto
participation
panelista,
of our
el
fourth
señor
presenter,
Jorge
Mr. Jorge
Terrones
Terrones
del
Cano,
Programa Mundial de
from
Alimentos
the
de la
World Food
Organización de
Program
las Naciones
of
Unidas.
the UN.
Actualmente se desempeña
And
como
right now,
oficial de
he
interacción
has the position of
humanitario-militar
interaction
en la
officer
Oficina Regional
for the
para
regional
América Latina y el Caribe.
office for Latin America and the
Con más de
Caribbean,
15 años de
with more than
experiencia
15 years
en
of
preparación
experience
ante
in
desastres y
preparations
respuesta a
for
emergencias,
disaster response
ha
and
contribuido
response to
al
emergencies,
fortalecimiento
he
de
has
los
contributed to the
esfuerzos de reducción
strengthening
de
of the
riesgos
efforts
de
of reduction
desastres
of risks
y
of
coordinación
disasters and
civil-militar
coordination,
en la región.
civil and military
Durante su tiempo en
coordination
la
for the
Oficina
region.
para la
During his
Reducción
time
del
in
Riesgo,
the office
se enfocó
for
en
risk
mejorar la
reduction, he
preparación ante
focused on
desastres
improving
y el nexo
the
humanitario
preparation
desarrollo de
to
América Latina.
attend to these
Lidera
disasters
la
and in Latin
coordinación
America. And he
entre
was
las
also a leader
operaciones
between the
del Programa
coordination
Mundial
of
de
the
Alimentos y los
program,
actores
the World Food Program,
militares,
and the military
garantizando
actors,
la asistencia
thereby
humanitaria
guaranteeing the
eficaz en
humanitarian aid
emergencias
that is
complejas.
efficient in
Su
very
trabajo
complex
abarca
emergencies.
desde el
His
Cuerno
work
de África hasta las
is
Américas,
from Africa to the
donde ha
Americas,
desarrollado
the scope of
grandes
his work, and he has
capacidades
developed
estratégicas.
very
La
big
experiencia del
strategic
señor
capabilities.
Terrones en la
His
colaboración
experience
civil-militar
in
se
cooperation from civilians and military is very well aligned with the aerospatial sector, and it plays a very big role in disaster response. And this makes him a very valuable presenter in this seminar. In the next 20 minutes, he will be presenting the topic, Strengthening Humanitarian Response, Interaction of the World Food Program with the military forces and security forces. Mr. Terrones, good morning. The audience is yours.
Hola, muy buenos días. Espero me puedan escuchar de manera
Good
correcta.
morning.
¿Me confirman
I
si me
hope
escuchan y me ven?
that you can listen to me well.
Sí,
Please confirm.
Lo
Yes,
vemos y escuchamos
we
muy
can
bien.
see you and we can hear you well.
Perfecto. Muchas gracias.
Perfect.
Mi nombre es
Thank
Jorge
you.
Terrones
My
Cano.
name is Jorge
Soy especialista en
Terrones
acción
Cano.
militar de Mundial de Alimentos.
I am in the
Para
World Food
mí,
Program.
en representación de esta organización, es un honor estar
It is
aquí
an
hoy y
honor
poder
to be here
compartir este espacio
today
con
and being able
distinguidos
to
representantes
share
de
this
las Fuerzas
space with
Armadas
very distinguished
y expertos en
representatives from
asistencia
the armed
humanitaria del
forces
continente
and
americano
experts on
y también de
humanitarian
otras
aid
partes
in
del
the
mundo.
continent and in
La
and
Coalición
of
de
other
Interamericana de
parts
Defensa
of the
y el
world.
Sistema de Cooperación de
The
las Fuerzas
IADB
Aéreas
and the
Americanos
System
por
of
su buen trabajo
Cooperation
en
of
crear
the
este
Air
espacio
Force, the
compartir
American
el
Air
diálogo.
Force. Thank you for creating
Hoy
this
voy a hablarles
space
sobre un tema
for this
crucial,
dialogue. I'm
la
going to
interacción
talk
entre
about
el
a very
Programa Mundial
important
de
topic,
Alimentos
which
y
is
las
the
fuerzas
interaction
de
of the World
seguridad en
Food
el
Program
continente.
and the security forces
Voy a
in the
comenzar
continent.
y
So
me
I'm going to
confirman, por
share
favor,
my
que me
screen.
pueden ver.
Please confirm when you can see it.
Sí,
¿Me confirman si lo veo?
así
Perfecto.
es, ya está
Yes,
proyectada.
yes, we can see it
Excelente.
being projected. Thank
Entonces,
you.
hay un par de
Excellent.
temas que quiero compartir el día de hoy con
So there's
ustedes.
a
Lo
couple of
primero,
topics
quizás
that I want to talk about. The
previendo
first
que
thing
no
is
estemos muy al tanto de qué se trate el Programa
maybe
Mundial de
we are
Alimentos
not aware of
o
what
el
the World
WFP,
Food Program
World Food
is.
Program, por sus siglas en idioma inglés. Voy a hablar sobre
I'm
PMA,
going to
luego
speak
sobre la
about
cadena de
this
suministro,
World Food
sus
Program, then
componentes,
about
y
the
finalmente
supply
sobre la
chain and its
interacción
components,
humanitario-militar.
and then finally about the military and
Lo
humanitarian
primero es
interaction.
hablarles sobre
First, I want to
la
talk
misión y
about
espíritu
the
del
mission
Programa Mundial de
and the
Alimentos, ¿no?
spirit of the World Food
Tenemos un doble
Program.
mandato.
We have
La misión
a
de alguna
double
manera
mission, and our mission
limita
is
el precio
limited
final
in
que
our it's delineated in our slogan. So it is to save lives, to change lives. So we work on the development area. We look for capabilities in the communities and communities that require our capability for disaster response or emergency response. And the other is to save lives because of in an event of disaster, we send food, personnel, technical assistance, etc. In the year 2020, we received the Nobel Prize for Peace, which is very important because, as we know, the conflicts and security are the main cause for hunger in the world. So the conflicts displace people from one territory to the other because they flee from the conflict itself and they abandon their land, their home, their job, the means for life, etc. So we have reached more people now than in the past. And I'm going to speak a little bit about this. So this is the WFP, and our main headquarters is in Rome, Italy. We have 6 regional offices, one in Bangkok, Cairo, Dakar, Johannesburg, Nairobi, and Panama. And I work in Panama. And we are in more than 120 countries and territories. We have more than 22,000 personnel around the world, and 87 people are on the field, so close to the beneficiaries in the zones of conflict around the world. This is a general image of the countries where we have our offices. However, the countries where we operate are even bigger. So let's focus on the left, where we have the Americas. We have 11 offices in the Americas and in the Caribbean. And this transporting food to the people who need it. So behind this, there's a chain of supply that is very complex. And we're not talking about formal markets, existing markets, but markets that have been destroyed, that are inexistent, that are not safe, without roads, without access. So this is a very big challenge. And the World Food Program is specialized in this. So please note that when I talk about the strengths of the WFP and our action areas where we work, there's a lot of similarities and a lot of synergies with the military forces. So in 2023, in numbers, we moved 3.5 million tons of food and $3,000 million in the value of food and goods and service acquired. Also, we the trucks rode for 22.3 million kilometers. Also, we transported 400,000 passengers, and we supported 762 partner organizations. So in any day, such as today, for example, in order to reach our goal of 150 million people in 2024, the WFP had in the air 132 planes in operations for airdrops, for example, airlifts, air cargo. For example, airdrops are to deliver food through air unloading whenever there's no accessibility to the territory. Also, we used 4,971 trucks at a global level. And we have these 36 mechanical workshops for the fleet. Also, we use the sea to send food. We have 80 unload ports. And clearly, maybe you will agree that the maritime transportation is very relevant due to cost, efficiency, the volume, etc. And so the majority of the food supply that the PMA does, more than 50%, is done through the sea, through the ocean. So the PMA, the WFP, established the first access for food for Ukraine in order to get wheat from Ukraine and send it to the rest of the world. So the WFP has a medium of 180 vessels and more than 29,000 containers. So out of the 3.2 million tons on 2023, the biggest majority was transported through maritime pathways. And this is relevant for today. We have air transportation, and these are the countries where we are operating with air transportation. So as you can see, we have 21 operations, most of them in the Middle East or Africa. And the main one is Haiti in America, which I will share a little bit about this in the next slide. And in 2023, we transported in these 21 operations 385,000 passengers because WPF provides air service for the UN and NGOs who cannot move from one side to the other. Also, we transported 25,000 meters of cargo, and this is very important part that we also did 1,500 evacuations. So the WPF, it evacuates personnel from one country to the other whenever there's an escaling of a conflict or whenever there's a disaster. It has been the only access route in Haiti. Was closed for humanitarian and diplomatic personnel. This was the only route that we could use for Haiti. So when the commercial airlines stopped providing services some months ago, the WFP with its helicopter was the only actor who was able to take the personnel directly. Also, when I was in Somalia, the evacuations were provided with the service, the air service from the UN to evacuate the personnel out of the conflict area. Also, we have made airdrops, 6,900 meters of airdrops, which are loads of cargo that fall from the sky with parachutes in 26 areas. And this happened in South Sudan. These are the assets that the WFP has, the fleet, the fixed fleet. So it's 141 and 34 helicopters or rotational mechanism. And so we have these in Haiti also. And recently this helicopter in one of the operation of transporting food and personnel, it received some shots, and the helicopter had to land, had to have an emergency landing. There was a problem with the gangs in the area, so we are exposed to these issues, the security problems in many parts of the American continent. So in order to have this supply chain, of course, we don't only use the terrestrial means or maritime means, but we need to have some storage space to store all of this food. So we have a global network of 5 centers who store, and they also buy and transport articles, not food articles, but support resources. It may be tents, also elements for storage, also hygiene products, for example, to be distributed, health products. So the WFP has like 400 different types of articles for emergency, between tents and sheets, medication, etc., and for a value that is of over $55 million to be able to operate this global network of 5 centers, distribution centers. And we have this team who advises the governments in establishing their own storage warehouses. So these are the deposits of response that we have at a global level, and so they are distributed throughout the globe. And so we have in Kuala Lumpur, Dubai, Las Palmas. Now, what we want to deal with today, which is the interaction, the military and humanitarian interaction. Of course, you may have realized that due to the challenges and the opportunities in the work that we do, the interaction with the military is very important. So we're talking about logistical capabilities, capabilities of delivering, of doing on the both sides, on the side of the WFP and this is why this is very necessary to have this cooperation. So then we have the increase of the military participation in functions that are not traditional. For example, in other parts of the continent, there has been a bigger involvement, for example, in reduction of disasters, management of disasters. Also, the public trust in the continent, the American continent, is very good for the armed forces. Especially whenever there's a disaster, people expect that the armed forces are going to come out to the streets and they're going to be the ones who are going to provide a response and a direct attention to the needs. And this is clear, and this has been maintained throughout time. Also, the pandemic was a very big challenge where the military forces responded to all these expectations and they demonstrated their capabilities of being able to deliver. And this is something that must be acknowledged. Also, the military forces have an ever more bigger need and hope, a desire to cooperate with the neighbor armed forces. For example, there's some fire force in the American continent, and there's cooperation between country to country who has this preparation. Whenever there's an earthquake in Central America, for example, there has to be this synergy. And also the number of armed agents is also being increased. We have in the continent, we have challenges such as the gangs, drug dealers, terrorists, and all this. So the cooperation between the humanitarian sectors and the military forces is very necessary. And sometimes we're working in the same areas because, for example, drug dealers, they bring hunger, there's needs for humanitarian aid. So what is the interaction between the humanitarian side and military side? It's a dialogue and coordination between military agents, civilians, and security agents. And this is very necessary to be able to support the objectives and the operational requirements of the WFP. Why do we need this interaction? To be able to do it in a proper way, to avoid competition, to work together, to minimize duplication. We're more efficient in what we do, and of course, whenever possible, to work jointly. So we are around the globe. I am the officer for the American continent for this interaction, military and humanitarian. We have another officer in Washington and another one in the Caribbean, and around the world we are distributed, as you can see in the image. So we have a lot of experiences of how we do this interaction on the global level, a lot of lessons learned, and a lot of knowledge and the needs to share this development of capabilities with the military. I want to conclude this session sharing with you some practical cases so that we can see that not everything is done in theory or spoken in theory, but we have worked together. We're still working together. In response to the Hurricane Dorian in the Bahamas in 2019, the WFP, with the approval of the government and also with the UN, it helped to coordinate the military resources for the US, for the logistics part, for distributing food, and also in Holland for the construction of mobile units, the distribution of the mobile units to distribute food, and also the transportation of personnel from the WFP and all other resources. In the picture on the left, the warehouses that you can see in the back are these warehouses that we have in the disaster area. As you know, if you can enter this area of disaster, we have a lot of the arrival of donations, and this can collapse the area of the airport. And so it needs to maintain their capability so we can attend by building these mobile warehouses, and they're very easy to put up, so we can store food inside. And also with the support of the National Agency for Managing Emergencies in the Caribbean, we also support with an emergency center and a logistics center in Marsh Harbor. So when talking about COVID-19, the JACMA Foundation made available 83 tons, metric tons of health products. And because they knew that WFP had this logistic capability to mobilize all of these resources in very challenging conditions, such as the COVID-19 conditions, because the airports were closed, the airlines were closed. There's a lot of needs for health products and many challenges, logistical challenges. So they requested the WFP to provide support, and the WFP, in coordination with the Air Force from Canada and the government of Panama, they did this operation where we provided this aid. So from Panama, in our warehouse, humanitarian warehouse that I presented before in the other slides, so we stored first and then we distributed to the countries that are below: Guatemala, Honduras, Trinidad, Tobago, Barbados, San Vicente, and the Grenadines from Panama. So this was an operation that happened between June and July of 2020. And it was very successful. And also we have in South America, in Colombia, in different times, we have cooperated with the National Army to transport, for example, in 2018, 170 tons of food to Puerto Estrella when it was required, because you know the geography of Colombia. It is an area where you cannot ride through vehicles. We cannot move trucks from the main cities with food. So the capability, the biggest capability in order to transport very high volumes of food, it would be through this National Army. And so in 2020, also, we took 11,468 kits for emergencies to inaccessible areas, in this case, Puerto Estrella, Nazaret, Siapana, and Taguaira. And this considering that there's no conflict in that area at the time, in that area of the country. So these are some examples. Now we're doing similar work in Haiti. So I want to conclude with this. Maybe this is an initiative. These are ways in how we can cooperate in the future, and there's some possibilities. Maybe you can think of others, and we can talk about them later. So the first is the development of capabilities, joint capabilities, such as the one that we're doing, what we're doing today. So I am learning from the military partners of the continent, lessons learned, the capabilities, the practices that you have, and together we can develop capabilities that ensure that whenever there's a disaster, for example, there's a volcano erupting or there's an earthquake, whatever, we can find ourselves together in this area of disaster, and we know that each of us, what our capabilities are, and we can work better together. Also, the WFP is available to participate in the exercises that you do at a regional level. For example, the MECOLEX exercise of the IADB, Great Wings, and other regional exercises, we're available for this. And I think this is very important also to invite the military actors to our own exercises in the humanitarian side, and also to develop, if it's necessary, protocols and procedures, joint procedures, or frameworks that allow us to cooperate with each other. So this is my presentation for today. Now we can move on to the questions. This is my name, Jorge Terrones, and I'm the officer for the interaction of military and humanitarian side, and this is my email. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Terrones, for your brilliant presentation. Very interesting, the work that you do, that the World Food Program does in our region. We have the active participation of our participants. In the YouTube channels, we have received a question from Mr. Eric Prado, and it is, so in the supply chain, how do you manage to rotate or circulate the volume of the the products that don't expire, so that they are not delivered when they are already expired and that they can contribute to their purpose? That's the question.
Perfecto. Muy buena
Perfect.
pregunta.
So this is a very good
Eh,
question.
El
In the
tiempo de vida
case of products that don't expire, of course, it has a bigger lifespan, so this allows for better planning. We have 5 warehouses at a global level in more than 120 territories and countries. We have centers of distribution. So this scale, on a global scale, this allows us to have synergies between regions as well. So we have a system, a complete system that looks at these stocks, not just at a regional level, but also at a global level. And it takes care of the different alerts that the system may provide about the lifespan or how much time it has been stored, like specific material has been stored. So this material can be moved to a different side of the world whenever it is necessary, or providing alternate solutions so that to avoid that this material, for example, it comes to the last 6 months of life in order to make a decision about it. So we have developed these capabilities of a system, of our own system, that allows us to monitor in real time the state of our stocks at a global level and to make decisions in order to move or rotate, or in the worst of the cases, in case there's no need to use it, but it's very rare, then also disposing of this element in order to avoid that it gets to the beneficiaries, that we deliver an asset that is not in the best conditions. Thank you for your response. We have a second question. In which other ways, besides the delivery of food to whoever needs it, does the WFP support in the humanitarian area? That's the second question. Of course, the UN system and the humanitarian world in general is being organized in a system of clusters or groups of interest, depending on the type of assistance. We have education, we have nutrition, there's health. The WFP interacts with several of these clusters. So among these, we have obviously the food cluster, but there's also the logistics cluster because of our logistics capabilities, and also technology, telecommunications. So the WFP not only has a capability of transporting food from point A to point B, and all of the logistics that this requires, but we also do, for example, we deliver vouchers so that the beneficiaries may buy the food that they need in the countries that are affected and in which the market still works. So this is a practice from the past that, for example, in an area or country of the region, there was a disaster, but there were still the capabilities of the market to deliver food. And so the food was delivered for free. For example, if there was an earthquake in the north of Peru, it's an area where rice is produced. And in the past, if we received a donation of rice from another part of the world, from China, from the US, etc., and this rice was taken to that market where we already had rice, what would happen to this product, this rice product? So what would happen to the producer who wants to sell his rice and they have to compete with this free rice from the donor? Well, obviously, this can break the market. So in markets wherever we have the offer, the WFP delivers vouchers or credit cards called rescue cards, with which the users can buy as if it was a regular debit card. They can buy food in these desperate situations. Also, we establish communications in areas of disaster. For example, if there's an area in which there's no communication because they collapse, so the WFP has the capability of reestablishing the telecommunications so that people can communicate with each other. Also, we provide technical assistance from drones in order to capture images after the disaster. And we also have a program of resilience, of climate adaptation, and also we provide training for food security. This is for changing lives, as we mentioned before. So we save lives and whenever there's a disaster, and the other is to change lives, to avoid that. So whenever there's another disaster, we can avoid it, to have the presence of the WFP there. So there's multiple aspects in which the WFP, which is the biggest humanitarian organization in the planet, so we are in very different fronts, and we are always available to cooperate and to assist the countries that require it. Thank you for the question. Thank you for your response. Very interesting information for our participants. Mr. Jorge Terronescano, in the name of the IADB and the System of Cooperation of the Armed Air Forces, American Air Forces, we want to thank you for your brilliant participation on the topic of strengthening the humanitarian and the aid programs, and also the interaction with the military and security forces. Thank you very much. And before we move on to a different,
Le informo que ya fue canalizada a nuestro respuesta. Quiero extenderles a toda la invitación a los participantes que están remitiendo sus preguntas. También agreguen su correo electrónico
to add their email so that the questions can be answered through this same means in a timely manner. Thank you. Well, dear audience, we're going to take the break, the 10-minute break that we had foreseen. At the end of this break, we will continue with the presentations. We'll see you in 10 minutes.
Buenas tardes. No queremos empezar
Good afternoon. We would not like to start this part without thanking for the active participation of our attendees to the different YouTube channels in English, Portuguese, and Spanish. Look at the number of participations that we have had today. Unfortunately, some of the questions cannot be answered at the forum, but we invite you to send your questions through the messages of the YouTube channel and to put your email address next to it. I can assure you that our professional speakers will give you a timely answer to satisfy your goals in this seminar.
Nuevamente, buenas tardes. Agradecemos la participación.
Once again, good afternoon. We thank you for your participation in our seminar for the prevention, response to disasters, and employment of aerospace means. From the Casa del Soldado, the seat of the IADB, we're going to start with our program. The sustainable development is not an objective. It is a responsibility that is shared. Without action and environmental protection, there will not be a prosperous future for our states, nor for the future generations. With this phrase, I have the pleasure of introducing to you the fifth presenter of the topic,
Role of
the humanitarian unit and of rescue operations in humanitarian assistance. Lieutenant Colonel Rigoberto Antonio Laínez Pastrana of the Army of Honduras works as the Deputy Commander of the Rescue and Humanitarian Unit of Honduras with 28 years of military service and seniority of 5 years in this grade. He has a BA in Business Administration and a Master's in Command and Chief of Staff. In the next 20 minutes, he will about the role of the humanitarian unit in humanitarian assistance operations. Lieutenant Colonel Laínez, welcome. You have the floor. Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Manzano. Good morning to all of you and good afternoon. I don't know if you can hear me. Yes, we can hear you. And please see if you can project your slides. 100%. Thank you. On this opportunity, I'm going to talk about the role of the humanitarian and rescue unit in operations of humanitarian assistance. To develop this topic, we have an agenda to follow with regards to the phenomena and the origins and the legal framework and the principles of the plan Aid 21 and support to cases of disasters, and the mission, vision, and capabilities of the humanitarian rescue unit and the humanitarian assistance that has been provided at the national level and international level. Honduras is located at the center of the Central American Isthmus and has a border with the Caribbean to the north and to the south with the Pacific Ocean, to the east with the Republic of Nicaragua, and to the west with the Republic of Guatemala and El Salvador. It has a surface of 112,492 square kilometers. It is the second largest country of Central America. Its territory is very irregular, with mountain ranges, valleys, and rivers. The climate is warm and humid. It is a strategic point for maritime trade between North America, South America, the Caribbean islands, and also trading with the Asian and European continents. It is a bi-ocean country because it has both the coast in the Atlantic and the Pacific. Honduras is a country that is vulnerable to different natural threats. The most common are the hydrometeorological threats and the anthropogenic ones. In Honduras, we've had enormous human losses due to these threats. And in the last century, almost 5 million people have been affected by natural disasters. We've had 2 hurricanes that marked the before, the during, and the after, like Hurricane Fifi and Hurricane Mitch. Hurricane Fifi in 1974 and Mitch in 1998. Hurricane Fifi caused 100,000 deaths, and Hurricane Mitch, approximately 5,000 deceased. The Help Plan 2021 is a military tool where we can support the population in cases of disasters, be they natural or man-made. In this plan, Help 2021, we have defined that our institution to respond to these phenomena is framed at 4 levels. Level 1, it is the situation that can be carried by the resources that are available locally to cover all the damages to the population. Our institution and gives support by our soldiers in 15%. Now in level 2, the situation requires the mobilization of local resources, additional local resources beyond the ones that have been earmarked for emergencies without exceeding its capacity. Our institution provides 25% of our resources and staff and logistics in level 2. In level 3, the situation requires the support of other localities to be cared for at the provincial, departmental, or state level. Our armed forces in these cases involve 50% of our staff and logistical support. And in level 4, the situation requires national and international assistance to be solved. Our armed forces in this level involve 75% of all their staff and logistical support. Something important of these missions related to the defense of sovereignty and territorial integrity is that they're always there. We always leave that margin of 25% to take care of this one. How do we frame the Help 2021 plan at the initial phases? It is already embedded in our Constitution and also in the Armed Forces Law. In the Constitution of the Republic, it is in Article 274, which is the cooperation to the different secretariats of state and carrying out collaboration with the staff and means to face all natural and disasters or man-made disasters and emergencies that affect the persons and their goods. To carry out the legal basis, it is divided into 3 phases: preparation and prevention. In preparation and prevention, the armed forces carry out planning and coordination activities, as well as the identification of the facilities that could be hit by a disaster, and also supervise the use and the handling of all the logistics to be employed in this first phase. In the second phase, the phase of care and management, when there is a catastrophe or an emergency, we carry out search, rescue, and evacuations, and we contribute with the management of the deceased, as well as medical care to those that have been affected. And in the recovery phase, when we determine that the situation is becoming normal, we will withdraw in a synchronized manner all the units that are there. And we only keep those that have the responsibility in the affected areas. And in this way, help in the debris removal and the repair of the communication means and public services in the affected areas, as well as the staff that has been deployed to provide support. In the humanitarian principles that are framed within the group of humanitarian coordination of the United Nations, it is clear, these 4 principles are clear, that for humanitarian assistance and as a humanitarian rescue unit, we have to be clear in everything that has to do with the suffering of people, and it has to be cared for wherever it is. And the goal of humanitarian assistance is to protect the life and health of the people and guarantee the respect to human beings. In neutrality, humanitarian assistance should not take party and be it political, ideological, or of any other nature. Impartiality is a need that has to be carried out based on the needs and prioritizing the most urgent of needs. And in this way, take the basis of nationality without a distinction of races, religion, or political opinions. And in independence, operational independence, the humanitarian action has to be autonomous and strong. The support forces for emergency cases. In our country, we have these organisms, which are institutions that in the case of emergency, the 21 plan enters into force. And we do this through the dispatch of the Secretariat of the Ministry. And we activate COPECO, the Red Cross of Honduras, as well as the firefighters and the Green Cross. This is the arm that is used to give immediate response to a natural or man-made disaster. Our humanitarian unit for rescue was created according to Agreement 0410 with the purpose of helping and taking care of potential natural disasters at the national, regional, and international level, and to all the people affected by these phenomena. Our mission is that the humanitarian unit and rescue unit will carry out humanitarian operations in any country of Central America and the Caribbean in which a natural disaster happens, in order to save and protect human lives, and in this way mitigate the effects of a natural disaster or a man-made disaster. Our vision is to have available a highly capable unit that is trained and specialized in missions of emergency, both nationally and internationally. Our humanitarian and rescue unit is organized in 7 subunits to comply with the different missions that are entrusted by the High Command, and in this way provide humanitarian assistance to our population. We have the subunit of rescue and support and service unit, the command unit, health unit, coast, forest guard, and engineers. These subunits have the purpose to resolve and minimize all the damages caused by any type of incident. Likewise, they allow the integration of resources, such as facilities, equipment, and staff, within an organizational structure. We can also use it not only for emergencies, but also for planned events. And it habilitates a coordinated response among several jurisdictions and agencies, and also establishes common processes for planning at the level of the incident and resource management. Another important thing that we have to highlight in these subunits is that we identify and record both quantitatively and qualitatively the localization or location of the disaster and all the collateral damages associated to this emergency, to be able to make decisions appropriate to the situation. What capabilities does our humanitarian and rescue unit have to respond to these phenomena in the areas of impact? We have the capacity to establish an incident command, damage assessment and needs analysis, search and rescue in collapsed structures. We carry out some rescue tasks in confined spaces, the use of canines to search and rescue victims, water rescue, the support in forest fires, mobilization by land, air, and sea, the installation of the infrastructure necessary that will make possible the operationality. Also, the operationality on any terrain, meteorological conditions, and adverse conditions. Our unit, our humanitarian rescue unit, has performed in different humanitarian assistance cases, both nationally and internationally, as you can see on the slide. At the left, far left, was the support that we provided at the island of Guanaja. To the far right, the Eta and Ota storms. In the lower left side, a forest fire that is a reserve in our country called La Tigra. And to the far right, the sinking of one of the districts in our capital city. These are just some of the missions that we have carried out regarding humanitarian assistance. And we have participated as UHCR internationally. To the far left, the upper part, left part, our unit participated during the earthquake in the Republic of Turkey. To the far right, Hurricane Otis in Mexico. The commander of the humanitarian rescue unit participated in the planning in Mexico City for the Tecaman operation that is going to be developed in 2025. And we also participated in Belize rescuing an airplane that fell at sea. And to the far right, we have the participation of my participation in the planning in the city of Guatemala in the exercise Stepton Guardian that is going to be carried out in 2025. In this way, I conclude my participation, and we can move on with the questions. Thank you very much, Lieutenant Colonel Lainez, for your brilliant presentation and very important information. Continuing with the program, we are at the question and answer session. Thanks to all our attendees for this active participation through the YouTube channels. We have time for 2 questions. The first question is, what is the performance of the humanitarian and rescue unit in missions abroad? You already spoke a little bit about it, but if you can go more in depth, please. Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Manzano. Very good question. The performance of our staff in those missions in foreign countries has been very satisfactory because we have strengthened the technical knowledge to be employed in the training and operational readiness of our units.
Correcto. Muchas
Correct.
gracias.
Thank you very much. We have another question. What acceptance does the unit have from the population? What is your impression? It is very gratifying to see that our population, in any case where they are affected, they always call immediately, they always call us. And that's how the humanitarian unit has the support in the area of impact of the population. And in this way, we can cover all the needs of the population. Thank you very much. Very kind for your answer. What would be then the expectation on the exercise that is going to be carried out in 2025? Well, the expectation is that the members of the humanitarian rescue unit will involve themselves in this training, both in Mexico and in Guatemala, with approximately 10 to 15 members. Thank you for your kind answers, Colonel Rigoberto Antonio Lainez Pastrana. On behalf of the IADB And to Sikofa, we would like to thank you for the time that you have provided us in explaining the role of the Humanitarian and Rescue Unit of Honduras in human assistance operations. Thank you.
Como militares y agentes civiles responsables de ejecutar acciones y operaciones de rescate, de ayuda humanitaria y respuesta a emergencias,
and response to emergencies, we always have to be prepared to provide a helping hand to our people. And this is a big responsibility to protect our nations. And therefore, the training and the constant improvement of procedures, it is a task that never ends.
Con esta reflexión,
With this reflection,
tengo el honor de introducir a
I
nuestro
have the honor
último
to
expositor
introduce our last
en este primer
presenter
día de
in
seminario,
this first day
el
of
señor
seminar,
coronel Fábio
Mr.
Rodrigo
Colonel
de
Fábio
Assis,
Rodrigo de
del
Assis
Ejército Brasileño.
from the Army of Brazil,
Actualmente es el
and
jefe de la
currently he
División de
is the chief
Cooperación en
of the
Desastres de la
Cooperation and
Junta
Disasters
Interamericana de
Division of the
Defensa. Se
IADB.
graduó de la
He
Academia
graduated
Militar de
from the
Agujas
Military
Negras en
Academy of Agujas Negras in
1998.
1998.
Ha realizado cursos
He
en
has
materia de
taken
asistencia
courses
humanitaria,
for
tales como
humanitarian aid,
apoyo a las
such
operaciones de
as
asistencia
support
humanitaria,
for
especialmente en
humanitarian aid,
circunstancias de crisis y
especially in
desastres,
circumstances of
impartido por
catastrophes
la
or
Agencia del
disasters,
Programa Mundial de Alimentos
and
de
given
las
by the
Naciones Unidas
WFP
en la
of the
Oficina
UN
de Panamá.
in the Panama office.
Asistencia humanitaria, respuesta a desastres,
Humanitarian aid,
impartido
response
por
to
el
disasters
Centro William Perry de
by
Estudios
the William Perry
Hemisféricos de
Center
Defensa,
of the
situado
Hemispheric
en el Fuerte
Studies
Leslie
of
McNair
Defense
en Washington, D.C.
in Washington, D.C.
Respuesta humanitaria a conflictos y
Humanitarian
catástrofes,
response to
impartido
conflicts and
por la
catastrophes
iniciativa
given
humanitaria
by
de la
the
Universidad de
Humanitarian
Harvard.
Initiative of the Harvard
Entre las
University.
principales funciones
And among the main
desempeñadas
functions,
en noviembre del 2002,
in November
fue
of
desplegado en
2002,
Timor
he
Oriental,
was deployed in
donde prestó
Timor,
servicios
Oriental
como
Timor, and
oficial de planes logísticos en el
he was an
marco
officer
de la
for
misión de
logistical
las
plans
Naciones
in the
Unidas.
framework of the
A
mission of the
finales
UN.
del 2018,
At the end of
fue
2018,
asignado como
he was
instructor
assigned
en el
as
Centro de
instructor
Entrenamiento de
in the
Apoyo
Training
a la
Center
Paz,
for Support for
ubicado en
Peace,
Addis
located
Abeba,
in
Etiopía.
Addis, in
Comandó el
Ethiopia.
37 Batallón de Infantería Mecanizada.
Also, he was in
Coordinó
the
las
37
actividades de su
Infantry
organización militar
Command
durante las graves
during
inundaciones
the
en la ciudad de
serious
Sao
floods in the
Paulo
city
en
of
2022.
Sao Paulo in
Este año
2022.
coordinó el
And
ejercicio
he also
internacional de
coordinated the
simulación
international
de ayuda
exercise of
humanitaria
simulation of
MECODES
humanitarian aid MECODEX
MCDA 2024
MCDA
en Lima,
2024
Perú.
in Lima, Peru.
En los próximos 20 minutos,
In the next 20
presenta el
minutes,
tema
he will present the
Mecanismos de
topic,
Cooperación
Mechanism
en
of
Desastres,
Cooperation in Disasters,
Conferencia de Ministros de
Conference of
Defensa
Ministries
de
of
las
Defense
Américas.
of the Americas.
Señor Coronel
Mr.
Fábio de
Colonel
Assis, la
Fábio de
audiencia
Assis,
es toda suya.
the floor is yours.
Muito obrigado por suas palavras, Tenente Coronel Mazzano.
Thank you for your
Boa tarde a
words,
toda a audiência que nos acompanha
Colonel
nesse
Manzano.
seminário.
Good afternoon
agradeço
to
a
everyone,
liderança da
the
Junta
audience who is
Interamericana
joining
de
us
Pesquisa
today.
por esta oportunidade
Thank you to
de
the
estar
IADB
realizando a
for
apresentação
leading on
sobre
this
esse tema
topic
tão
and the
importante,
opportunity of
que é o mecanismo de
carrying out
cooperação
this
em
seminar
desastres, o
about
MECODE.
this very important topic, the Mechanism of Cooperation for Disasters, CMDA.
Durante a apresentação, nós
During
seguiremos
the
esse sumário,
presentation,
que é composto por
we will
uma
be
introdução
following
onde eu vou
this
explicar
index.
pouco sobre a
So
divisão
first
de
we have the
cooperação
introduction. I'm going
em
to explain a bit
desastres, divisão
about the
esta
division of the teams,
responsável por realizar as ações do MECODE.
division for
Na
disasters,
sequência,
and
eu
who
vou
is
falar
responsible
sobre
to
o mecanismo de
take
cooperação em
care
desastre
of
propriamente dito,
disasters. Then
a
I'm going to
plataforma
talk about the
digital
mechanism of
de apoio ao
cooperation
mecanismo,
during disasters, then the
o
digital
exercício
platform
de
for support,
simulação de assistência
the
humanitária
exercise
internacional,
or simulation
MECODEX,
for
e suas
humanitarian,
lições
international
aprendidas,
humanitarian aid,
o reconhecimento
MECODEX,
e as
and the lessons
perspectivas do
learned,
MECODE,
and then the
segundo a
acknowledgement
declaração
and
de Mendonça,
perspectives of the MECODE,
e uma breve conclusão ao
CMDA.
final.
And then a brief conclusion at the end.
Neste slide de introdução,
This
é
is the
importante
introduction
dizer que
slide.
a Secretaria da Junta Interamericana
So
de
it is important to
Defesa
highlight
tem em
that
seu escopo de trabalho
the
estes 10
IADB
temas e que o MECODE é
has
projeto
these
que está
10
inserido
topics,
exatamente nesta área de
and
cooperação diante de
MECODE
desastres,
is
cuja
precisely in
responsabilidade
this
é da
cooperation,
Divisão de
anti-disasters
Cooperação em
cooperation,
Desastres.
and its responsibilities is to take care of disasters.
Em seu rol de atribuições, a
And
Divisão
the
de
other
Cooperação em
attributions
Desastres
that
é
it has, this
responsável em
division
desenvolver o MECODE em
for
cumprimento
cooperation in
ao
disasters
mandato estabelecido pela
needs to
Organização dos
comply
Estados
with
Americanos,
the
que
mandate
normalmente é baseado nas
of the
resoluções
OAS
anuais
to
da
develop
Assembleia
this
Geral,
mechanism of
sobretudo
cooperation in
referentes
disasters.
aos assuntos coordenados pela Comissão de
And
Segurança
it follows the
Aqui
decisions
no
of the
slide,
General Assembly
à
that
esquerda
the
abaixo,
Security Commission
estão as resoluções de
for the hemisphere
2022,
follows.
2023 e 2024,
And
que
here you
amparam
can see
o
the
desenvolvimento do
resolutions
MECODE.
of year 2022, 2023, and 2024.
Falarei agora especificamente sobre o
Now,
mecanismo de cooperação
specifically,
em
I will
desastres,
talk about the
concebido
mechanism
pela
of
Conferência
cooperation
de
during
Ministros
disasters,
da Defesa das Américas.
and this was conceived during the Ministry Conference for the Defense of the
Continente
Americas.
americano
The
é
American
considerado a
continent
segunda região que
is
mais
considered
sofre
the
impacto
second
de
region
desastres de origem
that
natural e
suffers
antrópica
the most
em
of
todo
the
o mundo,
impact
que dependendo de sua
of natural
magnitude,
disasters and
podem
anthropic.
afetar as capacidades dos
Depending
países,
on its
assim
magnitude,
como
it
deve-se
can affect the
considerar
capabilities
que
of
esses
each
eventos
country.
estão se
And
tornando
also we
cada
have to
vez
consider that
mais
these
frequentes e
events
intensos.
are becoming
Diante
even
desse
more
cenário,
frequent and more
a
intense.
Conferência de Ministros da Defesa das Américas,
So,
por
facing this
meio de
scenario, the
relatórios
Conference of
elaborados pelo
Ministers
Grupo Ad Hoc em Assistência Humanitária
of the
e
ad
da
hoc
Declaração
group
de Santiago no Chile de
and
2020,
the Declaration of
endossou
Santiago
a
de Chile
implementação do
in
mecanismo
2020
de cooperação em desastres,
endorsed the
como forma de
implementation
facilitar
of
o
this
trâmite de
mechanism
informações atuais
for
e
response to
confiáveis
disasters to facilitate
sobre as
the
capacidades de
procedures
resposta a
so that we
desastres
can have reliable
existentes na
information
região.
about the capabilities for
Em
responding to disasters in the
2022,
region.
a Declaração
In
de Brasília,
2022,
no Brasil,
the
respalda a
Declaration of
continuidade do
Brasilia in
desenvolvimento do
Brazil
MECODE,
also backs
sob a
up the
coordenação e
continuity of the
execução da
development
JID,
of
da Junta
MECOLE.
Interamericana de Defesa,
So
como
with regards to
secretaria
this
permanente do
coordination,
mecanismo,
as a
organizando
permanent
anualmente
secretary of the
um
mechanism,
exercício de simulação de assistência
simulation
humanitária
exercise needs to be
internacional,
carried
o
out
MECODEX.
every year of humanitarian aid, which is MECOLEX.
O que é o MECODE? Então, aqui está
What is
a
MECOLE?
definição sobre o nosso
MECODE.
mecanismo. Então,
This
conforme
is the
consta no
definition
slide,
about
nós
the
podemos
mechanism.
dizer que é um mecanismo em
So
desenvolvimento
as you can see on
que
the
visa
slide,
proporcionar
it is
ajuda
a
humanitária
mechanism that is being
internacional
developed,
com base na troca
and
de
it
informações entre os
provides
34
international
países membros
aid
da CMDA.
in
Em
basis of the
sistemas
exchange of
regionais
information
e
of all the
subregionais
members who are
de
the state
cooperação
members
civil e militar,
of the
por
CMDA
meio
and the sub-regional
do
levels as
uso
well.
de uma plataforma digital que
Through the
permitirá o
use of a digital
compartilhamento de
platform that
informações
allows
atualizadas,
to
oportunas
share
e
the
confiáveis
information, the updated
sobre as
information and timely
necessidades do
information,
país
reliable,
afetado por
about the
evento de
needs
origem
of
natural ou
a
humana.
country that has been
Essa
affected
plataforma
by a
ajudará
natural
a
event or
gerenciar
human
melhor os
event.
recursos,
So this
buscando a
platform helps
complementariedade
to
de
handle
esforços,
better,
a
to manage the
transparência na
resources,
gestão
and
dos
to
recursos de
complement
ajuda
the
humanitária,
efforts
a
when
redução
managing
do
the
tempo de resposta
resources
com uma
of
abordagem
humanitarian aid,
inclusiva para as
and thereby
pessoas
reducing the
em
response
situação de
time
vulnerabilidade.
to be able to help people in situations, in
Bom,
vulnerable
aqui nesse
situations.
slide nós temos o diagrama
So
de
in this
relações
slide,
do
we have
MECODE. No caso apresentado nesse
the
slide,
diagram of the
o país
relationship
B,
of
afetado por
MECOLE.
desastre natural,
Where
teve
you
a
can
sua
see here, there's
capacidade
country
excedida,
B who has been
informando uma necessidade
affected
de
by a
ajuda
natural
humanitária
disaster,
internacional.
and their capacity has been overwhelmed, and so they require international aid.
Assim sendo, o ponto de contato designado pelo país tem
So being
papel
this so, the
importantíssimo
point of
no
contact
lançamento
that
das
has been
informações
designated
na
by that country
plataforma
has a very
digital,
important role
tanto o chamamento
to be able to
internacional
put the information into
quanto a
the
lista
digital
de
platform
necessidades pelo
in order to make this international call for support.
E o oferecimento de ajuda humanitária internacional por parte dos países e
And
organismos
in order to also
internacionais.
offer the international help,
Para isso, é necessário
the
que
countries
esse ponto
and
de
international
contato seja
organisms,
ativo e operante. Ou
this
seja, em
point of
condições
contact
de
needs to be
receber a
active.
informação do
And
decisor
so
da ajuda
he needs to be in conditions,
dependendo
in the condition
da
that he can
estrutura
receive
estabelecida
the
para a gestão
information
de risco no país.
by
E
the
bem como
international
estar
organizations so that he
para
can
utilizar essa ferramenta
manage the
digital,
risk, the
cuja capacitação é
operating risk of the
coordenada
country.
pela GID.
And also the training to use that platform is coordinated by the
A partir de agora, eu
IADB.
vou fazer algumas considerações
Now I'm
sobre
going to
a plataforma
make some
digital
considerations
de apoio
about
ao
the digital
mecanismo.
platform that supports this
Então,
mechanism
para o atendimento
to
das
manage
expectativas
disasters.
do mecanismo, torna-se
So in order to take
imprescindível
care
a
of the
existência de
expectations
sistema
of the mechanism,
informatizado
it
que
is
permita a
vital that we
interação
have the assistance of this system that allows the interaction,
a prestação de apoio às vítimas de
and in order
desastre ocorrido nas Américas.
that the support
Tal
is
sistema
provided
deverá
quickly in case of
possibilitar
disaster in the
a troca
Americas.
efetiva de
So this
informações para
system
tornar mais eficiente a
has to
logística
provide the possibility of
envolvida
exchanging
neste
information in a very
bem
efficient
como
way, and the
deverá contar com
logistics
mapa
that
georreferenciado
this
que
support
possibilite
involves.
a visualização
Also,
das
there needs to be
mobilizações
a
ocorridas
map,
no teatro de operações do evento,
geographical map
facilitando
in
a
order
tomada de
to
decisão
have
das
information about the
autoridades
event in order
envolvidas.
to
Neste
facilitate decision
slide
making
que está sendo
of the authorities
apresentado,
involved. In
vemos
this
as
slide,
etapas que compõem a plataforma digital,
we
que
can
nada
see
mais
the
é do
faces
que o próprio processo
on
do
the
monitor,
digital platform.
desde o alerta aos pontos
This is the
de contato
process from the
cadastrados até a
alert
emissão do relatório
to the point of
de sua
contacts
utilização.
and then
Cabe destacar
until
que,
the
para
report
o
is
país
issued
ou uma organização
and its use.
internacional realizar o seu
So for
oferecimento
a country,
conforme
an
o
international
terceiro passo do
organization
processo,
that
é
offers
necessário, em
help,
fase anterior,
which is on the
o
third step of the
lançamento das
process, it is
informações,
necessary that we
ou
go through
seja,
the prior phase,
o
which is to
lançamento do
launch
chamamento
the information
internacional e da lista de
or
necessidades
this
pelo país
international
afetado.
call for help
A
and the
aprovação do
list of
oferecimento,
needs
com restrição ou não,
of the country that has been affected.
é feita pelo próprio país afetado.
And then we
Na
go to the
sequência,
fourth step,
o país
which
ofertante
is the
confirma
approval
o seu
of
apoio,
this offer for
afiança o seu
help.
apoio. E qual
So
seria a
the
participação
country
da GID
confirms, and
nesse
also the
processo?
country that is offering the
Simplesmente
support
a
also
facilitadora
confirms through the
dos
platform.
trâmites do sistema.
And what is the role of the IADB in this platform? It's just a facilitator of the system.
Bom, após a assinatura do acordo de cooperação técnica
So after
entre as
the
partes,
signing
a
of
Junta
this technical
Interamericana de
cooperation
Defesa
agreement,
iniciou a utilização da
CEPREDENAC,
ferramenta digital cedida pelo Centro de Coordenação para a Prevenção dos
this
Desastres na
digital
América
tool
Central e
was
República Dominicana,
started
CEPREDENAC,
being used to
uma
prevent
ferramenta
disasters in Central
adaptada à
America
realidade da GID,
and the
considerando
Caribbean.
a quantidade de países do continente, diferentes
So
idiomas,
this is
etc.
something that the IADB makes
Slide,
available, and
podemos
it
ver
includes
a tela
different
inicial do
languages and
sistema,
different countries. On the slide, we can see
onde
the
se encontra ao
initials
centro
in the
o
system.
lançamento dos incidentes em que a
And we
ferramenta
have
foi
here
utilizada este ano.
the launching of the incidents,
Os
and this
incêndios
tool was
florestais
used
que
this
atingiram
year
o Equador
for these
recentemente,
forest
logo
fires that
abaixo,
occurred in Ecuador
incidente
not
referente
so long
ao
ago,
exercício
and
de
then
simulação de assistência humanitária
we have
internacional
also a
do MECOLEX,
simulation of
que foi realizado em
international
Lima,
humanitarian
no Peru.
aid, the MECOLEX in Lima, Peru.
Em paralelo, a Junta Interamericana de
In
Defesa, em
parallel to
cooperação
this,
com o Instituto Militar
the
de Engenharia do
IADB, in
Exército
cooperation
Brasileiro,
with the
está
Military Institute
desenvolvendo
of
um sistema
Engineering
de
of
comunicação
Brazil,
web
is
com o
developing a
intuito de
system
ser
of
utilizado
applications, of web
como
applications,
ferramenta digital própria do mecanismo
in
de
order to
cooperação de desastre. Esse
use
projeto está em
those
fase de
tools
desenvolvimento
for
e será
communication for
finalizado
disasters.
em
So this
2025.
applications
Essa é a
is being
expectativa.
developed
O sistema foi
and it will be
desenvolvido
finished in
com foco
2025.
em proporcionar,
So that system was
faço
developed
a correção aqui, o sistema está
with
sendo desenvolvido com foco
the intention to provide, it's
funcionalidades
being developed
práticas
right
e
now
eficazes.
in order to provide practical
Uma interface
functions,
intuitiva,
mainly
com
an
design
intuitive
amigável e
interface
fácil de usar,
with a very friendly design for the
adaptadas para
users,
situações
with
reais
real
de desastre,
functions, realistic
aba de
functions
ocorrências
that
reais
have been
separada da
adapted
aba de
for
exercícios
real
de
situations
simulação,
of
como
disasters.
MECODEX, sistema de
Also,
acompanhamento de desastre
exercises and
e
simulation
também
are
tradução
separated
multilingüe,
from real events, and also it has a translation to facilitate communications between the countries.
E suas lições
Now we're
aprendidas.
going to look at the Codex and the lessons learned.
O exercício de assistência
So
humanitária
this
internacional
exercise of humanitarian aid,
é um exercício de
international
simulação,
humanitarian aid,
planejado, organizado e executado pela
it's a
GID com a
simulation aid
colaboração
that has been
voluntária do
planned
país,
and executed and
país
coordinated by the
anfitrião
IADB
do exercício. Esses exercícios
with
devem
the
cumprir
participation
as
of a
etapas do
country.
processo descrito para o MECODE,
So these
o que
countries
permitirá
have to
que o
comply with the
processo seja
phases of the
aprimorado.
process
É
in order
importante
to
mencionar que
make
a
sure that
participação
it
do
is
país
done
anfitrião
correctly.
durante
So
o
it is important
planejamento
to mention that it is
dos
important for
exercícios
the
é
host
fundamental,
country
pois
that during
permitirá o
the
aprimoramento das
planning,
ferramentas que facilitarão a integração da cooperação
they can
internacional
also
com os
plan for the
procedimentos
tools that the
nacionais
international
de cada país.
cooperation will use with
Nesse
the
slide,
national
nós temos os
procedures.
3 exercícios já
So
realizados
it needs to be aligned with the national
a partir de
procedures. So in
2022,
this slide, we can
sendo o
see that
primeiro
the exercises that have been
conduzido
done
aqui
annually
mesmo na
from
sede da GID,
2022.
na Casa do
So the first
Soldado,
one was
com
here in the
enfoque na
IADB
integração entre os países membros
headquarters
e
in the Casa del
as
Soldado
organizações
with the
internacionais.
approaches
O
from the
segundo,
different
no
members
Equador, voltado
and
para
the
a
international
estrutura de defesa
organizations. The
civil
second one
nacional.
happened in Ecuador,
E o terceiro, este ano, no Peru,
and the
considerando o
international
sistema de
structure
defesa
attended
civil do
also,
país
and
e
the
a sua
other one was
integração
done in
externa
Peru,
com os atores internacionais.
and
O próximo
it had
será
also
realizado
the
na
participation of
Guyana,
international actors, and the next one will
com
happen
previsão
in
para
2025
maio
in
de
Guyana,
2025.
and we foresee that it will take place like in May 2025 and the following
Aqui
year.
estão algumas fotos do nosso primeiro MECODEX
Here we
de
have some
2022,
pictures
conduzido
of our first
exclusivamente pela GID
MECODEX
na
in
Casa do
2022
Soldado, em Washington, D.C. Os delegados dos países membros
in
da
la Casa
GID
del Soldado,
participaram
and
representando o
the
seu
delegates
país
of the
como ponto de contato,
countries that are members of the
lançando os
IDB, they
oferecimentos de
represented their
ajuda
countries
humanitária
as point of
ao
contact,
desastre.
launching
O exercício respondeu
the offers
plenamente
for
às
humanitarian
suas
aid to
expectativas,
a
servindo de
simulated
base
disaster.
para a
And
realização dos
so we
próximos
fulfilled the
exercícios.
expectations. This was a basis for the following exercises.
Esta edição do MECODEX foi realizada em maio de
This is
2023
MECODEX of
nas
2023.
instalações
It
da
was done in
Universidade
May in
das Forças
Ecuador,
Armadas do Equador,
in
na
the
cidade
University
de
of the Armed Forces of
Sangolquí.
Ecuador,
O Equador teve
in
uma ação
Sangolquí.
destacada ao acionar sua estrutura de resposta a desastre para a
Ecuador
participação
had a
no evento,
very
demonstrando
good
a
response
importância
to
do assunto no
disaster.
âmbito
So for this
nacional.
participation
Como
of the
lições
event,
aprendidas desse exercício,
they
podemos
highlighted
destacar
the lessons
a
learned.
importância
So in this exercise, we can highlight that
entre o sistema de proteção
the
civil
importance
do país
of the
e o
relationships
Ministério das
between the
Relações
civil
Exteriores,
protection of the country and the
conhecer e
Ministry
tornar
of Foreign Affairs,
conhecidos os procedimentos alfandegários e migratórios para
and
envio
also
de
to
materiais ao país
inform
afetado
about the
e, por fim,
migration
entender
and
o
customs
potencial
services of the
do
country,
trabalho realizado pelos sistemas e
of the affected
conferências de
country,
cooperação militar,
and the
como o
work
sistema de
done by the
cooperação
system,
entre as forças aéreas
the
americanas, o
cooperation
SOFA,
system between
a
the armed
Conferência
forces
dos Exércitos Americanos, CEA, e a Conferência Naval Interamericana, CNI,
and
para
also the
colaboração em
conference
caso de desastres.
to cooperate in case of disasters.
Sobre o MECODEX
So
2024,
with regards to
conduzido em junho
MECODEX
deste ano no Peru,
2024,
o
in June
Instituto de
this year
Defesa
in
Civil,
Peru,
INDES, forneceu
the
as instalações do
Institute
Centro
of Civil
Nacional de Operações
Defense
de Emergência,
offered
COEM,
their
localizado no
building
distrito de
of
Trujillo,
the National
em
Center
Lima,
for
Peru,
Emergencies
para que o Ministério da
in the
Defesa e o
Trujillo's
Ministério das
district in
Relações
Peru,
Exteriores
in
do
Lima.
país, juntamente com a
So
GID,
for the Ministry of
coordenassem a
Defense,
execução
the
desse
Interior
exercício.
Defense Ministry, and
Como
the
lições
IADB, so we
aprendidas,
coordinated this
cabe
action of
destaque especial
performing
para
this
o uso de
exercise.
software
And then as lessons
confiável e
learned, we can
seguro,
highlight the use of a
fornecido para o
software, the
setor
very
da área,
reliable and
permitindo
safe
o
software
melhor gerenciamento das
provided by
informações
CEPREDANAC
no processo de
in
tomada
order
de
to
decisões,
improve the
quanto
management
à
of
ajuda
information
humanitária
during the
ofertada
decision-making
ao país
process
afetado, e bem como a sua
for
aprovação.
humanitarian aid in the affected
Da
country and
mesma
its
forma que o
approval.
MECODEX
And
2023,
in that same way,
observado
the
que é
MECODEX
essencial
2023,
que o ponto de contato
we could
designado
observe
pelo
that it
país,
is essential that
capacitado
the
no
point
uso
of
da
contact that
plataforma
has been
digital,
designed by the countries and that
exerça
needs to be
contato
trained in
com
the
os
use of the
setores
platform.
responsáveis pela gestão de risco
He has to have
de
contact with
desastres
the people
e proteção
responsible
civil nacional, tendo
in order
a
to take
ligação
care of the
necessária
risk
com o
of
Ministério das
national
Relações Exteriores
disasters, and there needs to be an essential link with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Defense of the country.
Estes quadros comparativos
So
nos
in this
mostram a
comparative chart,
participação de países e
we
de
can see the
organizações
participation of the
internacionais
countries
de
and
ajuda
organizations,
humanitária
international
nos
organizations
MECODEX
of humanitarian aid
2023-2024.
in the MECODEX 2023 and 2024.
Podemos constatar acréscimo nessa participação de ano
We
para o
can
outro,
also see that there is an
evidenciando
increase from one year to the other,
desenvolvimento do mecanismo.
6 countries, and this is a good indicator of the development of this mechanism.
Com esta foto agora, ao centro do slide, foi
And with
tirada
this
no
picture,
Salão de Bandeiras da JID,
that
da
is in
Junta
the middle of the
Interamericana de
slide,
Defesa,
this
no
picture was
dia em que
taken
houve a
in the
votação
Hall of
em
Flags
reunião
in the La Casa del
ordinária para
Soldado,
eleger Guiana
where
como
we
país
had
sede do
the
MECODEX
elections
2025.
and the ordinary
Após
meeting
esses
to
5
select
países
Guyana as the host
descritos no
country
slide se
for the next
candidatarem.
exercise. And also, we had all these other countries as candidates.
Já terminando a apresentação, veremos agora o
Then, to
reconhecimento e as
conclude this
perspectivas do
presentation,
MECODE,
we
segundo a
will see
Declaração de
the
Mendonça.
acknowledgement and the perspectives of the MECODE.
Durante a 16ª Conferência de
So,
Ministros da
during
Defesa das Américas,
this
realizada na Argentina,
16th
de
meeting
13 a 16 de
in
outubro
Argentina,
deste ano,
from the
foi
13th
assinada a
to the
Declaração
16th
de
of October
Mendonça,
of this year.
contendo o reconhecimento
So,
da
we
realização
had
dos
this
exercícios
declaration of
simulados
Mendoza.
MECODEX 2023
So, in order
e
to
MECODEX
acknowledge
2024,
the MECODEX
ressaltando
23 and
o
MECODEX
cumprimento dos
24
objetivos
exercises,
quanto à
and
validação
highlighting the
inicial
compliance
e a
with the
necessidade
objectives that
de
were
seu
proposed,
contínuo
with the initial
desenvolvimento.
validation and the need
Também foram
to
ressaltados
have
como
a
marcos
continuous development.
importantes a
And also,
participação
we
da JID em
highlighted as
diversos exercícios
important
simulados
topics
de ajuda
the
humanitária
participation of the
internacional,
IADB
como
in
visto
different
neste
simulations
quadro
of
à direita do
international
slide.
aid assistance, and as you can see on the right.
Aqui temos as fotos da
Here
participação
we
de
have the
militares da
pictures
JID
of the participation of the military agents of the IDB, and as observers of these exercises of humanitarian assistance, and the trainings with the systems and the international organizations that contributed to the development of this MECODE. So in that development phase, on the lessons learned and the good practices that they have been used to improve this mechanism.
Ainda segundo a Declaração de Mendonça, as perspectivas para o MECODE são
Based
muito
on the
positivas.
Declaration of Mendoza, the perspectives for MECODE are very positive. The IADB needs to follow the development of the mechanism as a way to potentialize the cooperation, to enhance cooperation in case of natural disasters in the hemisphere, and also it must organize the MECODEX.
Passaremos agora a nossa
Now we're
conclusão,
going to move to the conclusion,
apresentando algumas reflexões finais.
presenting some final thoughts.
Finalizando a apresentação, destacamos aqui a
So
importância do
analyzing the
MECODE
presentation, we can highlight here the importance of MECODE at the hemisphere, and it allows the international actors to interact through a platform. And also the states, they maintain their sovereign power to request and accept for offers of humanitarian aid of any humanitarian international actor. And our simulation exercise of humanitarian assistance, MECODEX, is a very important instrument of distribution of the lessons learned and good practices of cooperation in humanitarian assistance.
Dessa forma, eu termino a apresentação.
And in this way, I'm going to finish my presentation, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you for your attention.
Muchas gracias, señor Coronel de Asís,
Thank you
por
very
su brillante
much
presentación.
for your brilliant presentation. Unfortunately, due to time, we are only going to address 2 questions that have been sent through our YouTube channels. The first question is, during the process of MCODE, can the point of contact of the country make their offer of humanitarian aid without the affected country having prepared a list of needs? Excellent question. No. In that case, the points of contact of the member countries that is going to offer help, they need to be trained, and they also need to be available in the system, and they have to wait for the point of contact of the country, of the affected country, in order to launch the information, so that they launch the information of the disaster, so they make the first call for help through and also they need to upload their documents, and thereby afterwards they can launch their humanitarian aid offer. So this is how the system works, and this is the IADB provides training on this sporadically and in order to maintain active points of contact who are trained, because the digital platform may be used at any time in a real situation. So in case the country that is member of the IADB declares that there's an emergency situation, so after a natural disaster, and their capability of response is exceeding the means, then it has to do a formal request to the IADB through their delegate, their representative. And so the MCODE is still being developed, but the platform is in use. It's available to be used for official requests. Thank you for your kind response. We have another question. How does the MCODE interact with the systems and international organizations of humanitarian aid in our continent? Thank you for the question. So during the presentation, I highlighted the interaction of the IADB and some organizations, regional organizations of humanitarian assistance, such as the CEPREDANAC, with which the IADB has a cooperation agreement that has been signed, and also the participation of the IADB in the Operation 9 and the Paraná operation. It was coordinated by CEA in Brazil, in Foz do Iguaçu, in August last year. And there were other coordination meetings that are done regularly with this system, this humanitarian aid system in the continent. So with that, we can verify that these interactions are vital for the development of MCODE, because of the practices that we lived in, this exchange and trainings. During the simulations, there are some lessons learned being produced, and also information that is exchanged by the members of the IADB, and this is used in order to improve the mechanism. I think this answers your question, but I'm still available, and thank you, everyone. Yes, thank you very much, Colonel. So with this, we will end this session of questions and answers. Mr. Colonel Fabio Rodrigo de Assis from the Brazilian Army, in the name of the IADB and of the cooperation systems of Air Force, American Air Force, we thank you for presenting such an interesting mechanism, and we hope that you are successful in implementing the MCODE. We are convinced that it will be a very useful tool for our hemisphere. Thank you.
Señores y señores, les estamos presentando ya.
We are presenting to you now the slide with the agenda for the November 7th. So for tomorrow, so we will have the participation of the system of cooperation of the Air Forces, American Air Forces, and we will present 6 very interesting topics about the execution of air operations for humanitarian aid. So please don't miss this. Tomorrow, we will be waiting for you.
Señoras y señores, Ha llegado el momento de
So,
concluir
ladies
este
and
primer
gentlemen,
día de
it's the
seminario.
time to conclude this
Agotamos un
first day of the
programa
seminar.
lleno de
So we went
interesantes
through a
temas
very,
y
very
valioso
interesting
contenido.
agenda of
Esperamos haber
very
cumplido
valuable
con sus
content.
expectativas.
So we hope that
Hoy
we
alcanzamos
fulfilled all of
más de
your
6,000
expectations. We reached more than
participantes
6,000 participants today
de diferentes
from
países,
different
48
countries,
países para ser exactos.
48 countries to be
Quiero
exact.
destacar
I want to
algunas
highlight
reflexiones y
some
conclusiones
final
luego de
thoughts and
escuchar
conclusions
una
after
productiva
listening
jornada de
to this very
exposiciones
productive
sobre las lecciones
day
aprendidas, buenas
about
prácticas de las
lessons
Fuerzas
learned, good
Armadas y de
practices from
seguridad
the
pública
armed
en la
forces and
asistencia
public security
humanitaria.
in
Nos
humanitarian
damos
aid.
cuenta
We can
de la
realize, we
importancia
can
que
see the
siempre encierra
importance
este tema en
that this
particular.
topic has.
Somos conscientes
We
de
are
la
aware
vulnerabilidad
of the
ante los
vulnerability
potenciales
when
fenómenos
facing
atmosféricos.
potential
En
atmospheric
cada
phenomena.
ponente que se dio cita el día de
Every
hoy,
presenter
nos
who
damos
came
cuenta
today
de
to
que
present, we
encontramos
realize that
valiosas
we can
experiencias
find
que nos
in them
invitan
very,
a
very
seguir
valuable
trabajando
experiences that invite
para
us to
fortalecer
keep
nuestra
working
capacidad
in
operacional,
order to strengthen our
algo
operational
esencial
capacity,
para el nivel táctico que
something which is
ejecuta las
crucial for the
acciones
tactical
y para
level
el
that
nivel
executes the
estratégico que
actions and for the
toma
strategic level
decisiones en un
that
ámbito
makes decisions
multilateral
in this
y
very
multiorganizacional.
multilateral environment and
Además, es bien sabido que
multi-agency
las amenazas
level.
por
And it's
desastres
well known that the
naturales
threats
no
due
solo
to
son
natural disasters
hemisféricos o
are
regionales,
not
sino
just
mundiales.
regional or
Todos
hemispheric,
los
they are
sectores del
world
Estado
uh,
tienen el compromiso de
emergencies.
integrar
And
sus recursos
everybody
y
has the
emplear
commitment to integrate their
todas sus
resources and
capacidades
to employ
ante
their
escenarios tan
capabilities
complejos
when we
que
face
día
such
tras
complex
día se tornan
environments.
más
And day
agresivos.
after day, they are
Es por
even
ello
more aggressive.
que las operaciones
And
de ayuda
therefore,
humanitaria
the
requieren
humanitarian
de
assistance
varios
operations
elementos
require
para su
several
efectiva
elements for
ejecución.
their
Pero lo
execution in an
fundamental
effective
es
way.
que
But the
todos los
most basic
actores
thing is
nacionales
that
e
all of the national and
internacionales se
international actors
integren para
are
una efectiva
integrated
comunicación y
in order to
coordinación
have a
a
very
la hora
effective
de
communication and
ejecutar
coordination when
esas
executing
acciones que
those
convergen en
actions
salvar vidas.
that come together whenever we want to
La
save lives.
interoperatividad, el
So this
lenguaje operacional común,
interoperational
la estandarización de
the
procedimientos y la
standardization of
sinergia del trabajo
procedures
en
and the
equipo
synergy
son
of
los
teamwork
ingredientes
are the
indispensables
ingredients, the
para
basic
responder
ingredients
a
in
nuestros
order to
retos de
respond to
forma
our
rápida,
people in a
segura y
fast
eficiente
and
en los
safe and
momentos
effective
de
way
mayor dificultad.
in the moments of difficulties, when
Agradecemos a
difficulties
todos
arise.
los
So thank
ponentes
you to all the
por sus brillantes
presenters for your
presentaciones
brilliant
sobre temas
presentations
que
about
están a
topics
la
that
vanguardia
are
y por
very
compartir
current,
información
very
tan relevante
up to date,
que
and
servirá de
share
referencia
this
para
very
todos
relevant
nosotros
information that
a
will
la hora de
be used as a
responder
reference for
a
all of
eventos
us
de
whenever we
desastres
have to
naturales.
respond to these
Todos
natural
tenemos
disasters
nuestros propios
events. And
procedimientos,
we all have our
pero
own
todos
procedures,
podemos
but everyone
lograr
can
mejores
achieve
resultados si
better
trabajamos
results
juntos.
if we all work together.
Esperamos la participación de todos
So
el
we
día de
expect to
mañana
have
y
everybody's
auguramos
participation
éxitos a los
tomorrow,
ponentes
and
del sistema de
we
cooperación
expect that
de las
everybody will
Fuerzas
be
Aéreas
successful
Americanas.
in the
Mañana,
system of
con el
cooperation of
mismo
the Air
ímpetu y
Forces, the
energía,
American Air Forces,
tendremos
and
una
tomorrow with the
sala
same
abierta
motivation, we will
desde
have
las
our
9:50 de la
room
mañana,
open
hora
from
local de Washington,
9:50
D.C.
local time in Washington,
Nuevamente,
D.C.
gracias por
So
conectarse
thank you
a
again
través
for
de
getting
los canales de
connected through
YouTube,
the YouTube
desde la
channels
histórica Casa del
from the
Soldado,
historic
sede de
Casa
la
del
Junta
Soldado, which
Interamericana
is
de
the
Defensa. Se
headquarters
despide
of the
la
IADB.
teniente coronel
So
enfermera
goodbye.
diplomado
This
de
is
Estado Mayor
Lieutenant
Rocío
Colonel
Manzano Arellanes del
Rocio
Ejército
Manzano
Mexicano.
Orellanes from the
Muy
Mexican
buenas tardes.
Army. Have a very good afternoon.